step right up and come to the mic. And this is being recorded by Mr. Mangeras.
Thank you for having me here tonight to talk about your 2015 audited financial statement. Thank you very much to Kevin and Michelle and the business officer and staff. It was a very smooth audit. You're actually the first Massachusetts school district client of mine.
Is your microphone on?
I don't know. The blue light's on. Better through the video. Okay, great. You're actually the first financial statement audit that I've ever held for fiscal 2015. It's been quite a challenge this year with the GASB 16 implementation that I'll talk a little bit about. I'm going to start with the annual financial statements. That's the balance report that you should all have. Beyond the table of contents is the first page of the independent auditor's report. I'm going to go to the second page of the independent auditor's report, and that will be on page 2. And I'm going to talk about the opinion. That's what you're hiring us for, to give an opinion on your financial statements. So if everybody's on page 2, looking at the opinion paragraph, I just want to point out that we're giving an opinion on the district's financial statements, but we're also giving an opinion on the Minuteman Contributory Retirement System as of December 31st, 2014, and that information is included in the financial statements. So our opinion says that we believe that these financial statements are materially fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Below that is in other matters paragraph. I'm just going to mention that it's a little bit expanded from the prior year, and that is due to GASB 68. There's additional pages at the back of the report that are now required. They call that required supplementary information. Pages 4 through 10, I'm not going to go through these. This is what another section that is required in the report. It's called required supplementary information, referred to as the management's discussion and analysis section. It's an overview of the financial statements and the numbers pages in the report. The numbers pages begin on page 11 with the statement of net position. And this is the statement of net position as of June 30, 2015. You have one column titled governmental activities. This is the page in the financial statements I was talking about, GASB 68. It's a new accounting pronouncement that was effective with June 30, 2015 financial statements. What it affects, if you look down towards the bottom of the page in the non-current section, there's a net pension liability line item of $310,000. So this is the additional liability as a result of implementing GASB 68. And you're probably one of the few entities that is not materially impacted by GASB 68. And the reason for that is because your retirement system is very well funded. A lot of the financial statements that we've been looking at, districts that are participating in county retirement systems, there are huge liabilities that are showing up. We're talking like $8 and $9 million. So this was kind of a pleasant surprise there. The next page, page 12, is the statement of activities, a summarized P&L on a functional basis. And what I mean by that is going down the left-hand side of the page, you have the functional categories, administration, instruction, and so forth. And going to the right, you'll see the offsetting charges for services and grants that relate to those line items. The next page is, yes?
Can I ask a question?
I think probably we should allow her to go through her brief presentation.
Sure.
And then take the questions at that point. That's make it easier for you to proceed that way, or?
Yeah, that would be, that's fine. Page 13 is a different set of financial statements. So we're just looking at the government-wide financial statements. Those are the financial statements that show all of the long-term assets and all of the long-term liabilities. But really, for most, the focus of governmental financial statements is on the balance sheet.
This is where you see the fund balance section that everybody focuses very closely on. You have three columns: the general fund column, capital projects, and non-major governmental funds. The general fund column includes your general fund that you are used to seeing in your budget versus actual report. But under the accounting standards, it also includes your stabilization fund and your tuition revolving fund. So if you look down the bottom of the page, you'll see the fund balance section, and you have four categories of fund balance: restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Restricted relates to some restricted resources that you are including in your general fund. The committed line item, that's your stabilization fund balance, $247,804. The assigned line item is comprised of approximately $5.4 million of tuition collected or received in fiscal 2005 that's budgeted to be used in the 2016 budget. In addition to that, there's $145,000 of use of fund balance in that assigned line item for 2016 budget, and there's about $107,000 of encumbrances. Everything else falls into that unassigned line item, which is $1,057,298. So that unassigned balance in the general fund, that's kind of the starting point for what people refer to as the E&D calculation. Just wanted to mention very briefly, going across the right-hand side of the page in the fund balance section, in the capital projects fund, you have a negative $237,528. That'll be resolved with future bond proceeds, so that will be taken care of. The non-major governmental funds column represents your grants and revolving funds. Up in the restricted line item, there's $1,094,975. Those are the fund balances of all of the grants and revolving funds that are in a positive balance. The $1,705 figure represents, at that point in time, two funds that were in a small deficit, and it could be due to timing differences and so forth. But those of you that have seen financial statements going back a couple of years, you may recall that that number was significantly higher, and the school committee over the last couple of years has taken care of that by transferring monies to clear those deficit balances. The next page is the reconciliation page, and on page 15 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. If you look at the bottom of the pages and other financing sources and uses section, this is what I was just talking about. This is in 2015, the school committee had voted to fund some of those deficit fund balances and essentially wiped them out with that vote. Page 16 is another reconciliation page, and page 17 is the general fund budget versus actual. The most important column here is the variance column. That's the one to the far right. And you'll see at the bottom of the page, you ended the year with your budget versus actual in a positive $1,150,545. And that's a result of, partially, the number right above that, $889,639. That is under expending of appropriations by that dollar amount. And then going up towards the top of the page, $260,906. That's taking in more than anticipated. Page 18 is different funds on page 18. These are the fiduciary funds. They're not part of the governmental funds, and they have their own pages in the financial statements. The retirement trust fund, that's the retirement system as of December 31st, 2014. Private purpose trust funds or scholarship funds and agency funds represent the student activity fund balances as of June 30. Page 19 is the income statement for the retirement fund and the scholarship trust funds. And then starting on page 20 are the notes to the financial statements. And if you're comparing side by side the 2015 financial statements to 2014, you'll see we have about 7 or 8 more pages as a result of GASB 68. There's a couple additional footnote disclosures in there related to the contributory retirement system and also to Mass Teachers retirement system. At the end of the document is the additional required supplementary information. That begins on page 47. Those are all of the additional pages that are required by SB 68. And all that information comes from the audits of the retirement system, both from the audit of Mass Teachers retirement system. We obtained a copy of that in order to prepare these disclosures, and also the audit of your own retirement system, which we performed. Do we have questions?
First, I'll ask if the members of the FinCom have any particular comments they'd like to add at this time.
Only that we had a very good discussion, I think, and I think the results. Pardon me?
Is that on?
It is on. Yes, I think we had a very good discussion, full discussion amongst the Finance Committee of the audit. But I think what has led up to that is a couple of years of very good work responding to comments in prior year audits, so that even something like the extra reporting requirements haven't thrown us off the track. And I really appreciate the work of Kevin's department and the members of the Finance Committee and members of this committee for asking questions that kept us motivated through the year. So thanks.
Cheryl, we're going to talk about the management letter.
I was, yeah, I can
Okay,
talk
so-
about that before the detailed questions.
That was gonna be my-
Yeah, I'm not going to go into detail about the management letter, but I am going to commend the district for resolving all of the prior year issues in the management letter. If you've looked at the history of the management letter, there were many, many pages of recommendations, both material weaknesses, which are very, very severe recommendations or situations, and also significant deficiencies. And it was a huge undertaking over the last few years to slowly address each one of those issues, to come to this management letter, which has effectively resolved all of those comments that have been carried forward for the last few years.
Very good, Mr. Manjares.
Thank you. I guess my first question is that there are no deficits, because in the last year we had half a page that was full of maybe 10, 12 line items with deficits, and they're all resolved.
Correct. Yeah, the fiscal committee vote.
On page 11 of the statements, we have on near the bottom, we have grants and other statutory restrictions. That's $1.1 million approximately. Then on page 12, we have grants and contributions not restricted to specific programs. If we take the 1.1 million out of there, there's about $2 million left over. What makes up that $2 million?
It's really two different things that you're all looking at. The number on page 11 that you are looking at, the 1,110,453, that's the fund balance of all of the restricted funds as of June 30, 2015, as of that point in time. So that's all the balance of all the grants and revolving funds at that point. On the next page, the 3,111,786, that is represented by intergovernmental revenues from the general fund. So that would be like your Chapter 70 and your transportation money in that
Sorry,
line.
I missed that.
Your Chapter 70 money and your transportation money.
Are there tuition revenues from the revolving accounts
Yep.
as part of that?
Yep. Probably the best page to look at to get an understanding is not the government-wide financial statements, because it's not really the same method of accounting that you use to prepare your budget.
Sure.
The best page to look at would probably be on page 15. This is the fund basis financial statements. It's more closely aligned to the way that you keep your books and records, that your monthly reports are shown on. So if you look on page 15 in the general fund column,
This
this
is 16?
15, sorry.
Thank you.
Yep, there's a charges for services line item in the general fund column, 5,890,262. So that's your, what you call your revolving funds, tuition fund.
Is that's the ending balance or the starting balance, or that was the?
That's the revenue that you took in during the fiscal year 2015. Those are the charges, the revenues.
But still, that $2 million is made up of what? Back on page 12.
Back on page 12. The 3,111,786, is that what you're referring
Yes.
to? Yeah, that's something entirely different. If you go back to page 15, in the general fund column, the number right above the charges for services line item, that's where that comes from, and that's the chapter 70 and transportation money. So it's intergovernmental, it's charges for services.
So that's chapter 70 money, not tuition.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else with questions? Mr. Weiss?
I have a question that may be less for Cheryl or for Kevin and others. On page 17, and this is my second bite of the apple, so I did not notice it. The expenditures and other uses, those are roughly equivalent to our 1,000 level budget line items. And under the community services, the original budget of 135, and then the actual amount of expenditure of 0 with $135,000 variance. At 135 is our contribution to the revolving funds in our post-grad and other services. This would suggest that we didn't actually spend that last year. Is that correct? Because my understanding was we did actually make the contribution from the general fund to those revolving funds.
I'm not sure what that 135 was budgeted for. If it was budgeted for a transfer, it probably shouldn't have been budgeted on that functional line item. It should have been budgeted as a transfer to another fund, or to the revolving fund, so.
It's a contribution that Minuteman through the general fund makes to the postgraduate programs and the community programs that are run. The costs and revenue of which are in the revolving fund accounts. But there's a line item in our general fund budget every year to make a contribution towards the administrative overhead. And I think we always do that. That's why I'm surprised that that actual expenditure was 0. And I didn't pick this up in our finance subcommittee, so apologies.
It could be, the reason you're seeing the positive variance there, it could be as a result of an audit adjustment that we made, and I can't quite remember, I apologize, I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it might be just a gap presentation issue where it didn't make sense to put it on that line item. I think we may have reversed it.
We'll take a look at it.
Yep.
Follow up. Yeah.
Okay. Finance committee is meeting again soon, and I think Kevin can report back to us at that point.
It just jumped out. It's not a big dollar.
Yep.
Vince?
Thank you, Jeff. If we could turn to page 34, I have some questions about the OPEB. And it appears to me that our OPEB obligation has nearly tripled in the past 5 years, from about 4.2 to about 11.4 million, in spite of the fact that we made over $500,000 contribution last year. So I guess my question is, what accounts for that? And is this in any way putting at risk our bond rating?
The numbers are calculated by an actuarial valuation that is conducted. It's based on the percentages of contributions that are made to the health insurance premiums, both by the employee and by the district. There's many moving parts that relate to this calculation, including life expectancies and so forth. And that's where the information is obtained. I'll have to say it's not unusual to see what you're seeing here. Everybody that has similar health insurance programs that are partially funded by employees and partially funded by employers is in the same boat. So it's not that unusual, and OPEB is making, you're right, you had mentioned that how does this affect the bond rating agencies and their view of your entity. And because you're all in the same boat, I don't think it makes you any more negative than any other entity. What we are starting to see is communities starting to establish OPEB trust funds to at least take a stab at, saying we realize that there's this long-term liability out there. Even just I've seen a few that have just set it up and put very minimal dollars into it, like $10,000. That's a positive step in the right direction. I know the bond rating agencies do look favorably on that you recognize that it's out there.
Right, and in fact, in our town, I happen to be on the board of selectmen in our town, and over the past several years, we have contributed annually, and we put ourselves on a glide path to reduce that.
Yep.
What concerns me is that this glide path is quite the reverse, so I guess my question is, should we be doing more with regard to OPEB? And how surprising are the recalculated numbers, or have they been on an annual basis? Is this something that's taking us by surprise annually? Because it seems to me that we should have a pretty good idea a year or two ahead of time, roughly, what our obligation is going to be, and therefore should be able to plan accordingly.
I think it would be possible to fully fund it, but like I said, at least if you set up the OPEB trust fund, and maybe going forward in future budgets, include line items to partially fund it, I think that would look favorably on it. But again, I don't think that the liability that you're seeing on your books is that unusual. The numbers are huge.
Right, it's just contrary to my own town's experience.
Yeah.
Our liability has been going down each year.
Right, because you've been funding.
Yes.
Yeah, because you've been funding it, right. Yep. And it depends. I mean, every entity, the portion that the employer is paying is different, and so that has an impact on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Just as a follow-up to that, just to mention to members that we did fund a modest amount in the FY16 budget. We did fund $50,000, and we'll be setting up that trust account this fiscal year. So I think fiscal 16 is the first year that we take a proactive step to try and to fund the account, even though it's just a modest amount.
David?
Looking at page 15, there's, in the revenues, there's investment income of $8,000, $8,010. And I guess the total governmental funds or whatever is $8,314. Is that like 2 or 3% of some bigger number, or where is that bigger number located? Would it be in this report? In other words, we've invested money, some amount of money, and we've gotten back $8,000.
Yep, interest rate's very low.
So what, 2%?
It's probably lower. Yeah.
2% would be very good.
Yeah.
Is that total investment number somewhere?
That reflects the investment income that are earned on most of the district's accounts. It does not include the contributory retirement system. That's a separate, that'd be a separate fiduciary payment. So this is mostly the district's money.
Okay, so I guess I didn't ask the question correctly. What is the total number that this $8,000 generated?
What is it? What is like the balance rate?
Yeah.
It's probably about, if you look on page 13, the cash balance, and again, cash fluctuates throughout the year.
Of course.
At this point in time, you have on page 13, total governmental budget of $8.4 million in cash, but that goes up and down all year long.
I'm sorry, which line?
Under total governmental funds, cash and short-term investments on page 13, there's $8,471,771. But that's just as of that particular date in time. I mean, the day before could have been a much lower number than that. It just depends on cash flow. So you would probably have to do a more in-depth analysis of average cash balances and what to come up with.
Yeah, but at 2%, that's the number would be far greater than $8,000.
That's as of that point in time. That's not saying that you have $8 million in the bank every day of the year. You could have much less than that.
So with this $8,000 is interest from bank accounts,
Correct.
Yeah,
total interest that we get.
Yes.
Just an observation, 1% on an $8 million balance is about $8,000. So, that's money sitting in a short-term interest-bearing account, and interest rates are frighteningly low.
Wouldn't that be $80,000?
No, 8. Take
Times 100, $80,000.
And watch those decimal points.
just a lot of the.
All right. Very good. Well, Ms. Stevens-Burke, I want to thank you once again for helping to keep us on our toes. And for those members who have not been here for long, if you look at this management letter and you compare it to ones prior to Kevin's arrival and Nelson became our auditor, there's really quite a remarkable difference. And there's a lot of people who deserve credit for that. Obviously, the business office, our auditor. The finance subcommittee over the years has been really good at working with Kevin on the stickier issues, especially the revolving account and resolving them. But the person who gets, I think, most of the credit, of course, is Kevin Mahoney. And as I said, when I was looking through this packet, I kept looking for more pages of the management letter that weren't there. So I'm pretty impressed, and thank you very much, all of you, for your efforts over the years to bring us to this point, which is absolutely remarkable if you were to go back in time 5 years from where we were. So thank you very much. And any final comments for us?
Thank you. It really is a pleasure to work with Kevin and staff. We communicate throughout the year, and we always are getting questions from the group so that we can make sure that we have a smooth audit and a conclusion like we have today in your audit.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the kind words, but the staff has really stepped up and done a tremendous job. Cheryl Resendez, Stephanie Walsh, Lynn Delmer, and a couple of former employees that left during the year. Linda Gett, who was in the office over 20 years, and Maria Oliveira, over 30. They were all involved with this process over the last few years, and they really did a tremendous job, recognized the urgency, and I think have really taken some positive steps to try and get us to this point. So I appreciate the kind words, and I really do truly appreciate all their work.
Mr. Majerus.
I would like to personally thank you, Kevin, for the work that you've done, because when I was on the FinCom, we had $1 million in deficits. We were delivering the audit in February or March, and now that the deficits are essentially gone, and we have a document to work with as we go into the next budget cycle, it's fantastic. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Public comment. Anybody in the public wishes to make a comment? Very good then. Principal's report. Mr. Dillon, Mr. Clement. Yes.
I think we'll start off with the proposal in front of you for the field trip for the DVC students.
I think you need to move the mic a little closer to you.
I'm sorry.
Seems to be a little weaker today.
You have a proposal in front of you from our DVC department to go on a field trip to New York City. I think that's in front of you right now. And if there's any questions,
Someone like, do I have a second? Great, moves in second. Would you like to explain briefly the field trip?
It's an annual trip? Do they do this every year?
it's a trip to New York City for our DVC graduating class coming up. They're leaving at 8 a.m. on May 6, 2016. They'll be returning around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. If needed, they're going to stop, obviously, somewhere in between with something to eat, for the students to make a bathroom run. We've made all the arrangements for someone to be back here for them to open the gate and make sure that an adult is here while parents pick up the kids, or have to wait for a parent to pick up the kids, so that's all set. And you can see the list of activities there. Going to the museum, lunch at the museum, different types of things throughout the day. Actually, they're having dinner in New York at 4:30 at the Hard Rock Cafe, which is just a short walk from the museum. And they get picked up from there around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and get driven back to the schools. It's a good trip, kids are looking
Just
forward
the
to it.
seniors?
Yes.
Any questions? I have one. Does this field trip, in accord with all the various regulations of the school committee administration?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Any further questions? No questions? Let's go to a vote. All in favor of the motion on the table, raise your hand. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Right on. Is there going to be a presentation here, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So I'll give you a little update on the admissions activities that we've been going through. As you know, I've been working with Mark Turner, who is a marketing and admissions expert for vocational schools like ours. And we just completed in the month of October and a little bit into November, going out to all the middle schools and doing presentations. We have a revamped presentation where we talk a little bit about what the right kind of student is that we're looking for. We really try to emphasize the point of the competitive advantage of coming to Minuteman. And we have our students, and they've got a pretty tight script in terms of what they need to say when they present. I'm glad Sheila Nagel is here today, because she and Miss Terry O'Brien did an outstanding job preparing our kids. And they really made a huge difference in terms of whenever they spoke, the feedback from the faculty that was there, even the kids that were there, just was very impressed. I mean, whenever you have a kid talk about how they want to be an entomologist so they can study the venom to help destroy cancer cells, that's kind of impressive when it's coming out of the mouth of a 17-year-old. So they did a great job, and as a result of that, I'll show you. At the end of every presentation, we asked the kids to fill out a card if they were interested in learning more about Minuteman, and we were able to get 1,366 kids to fill out a card expressing some level of interest of learning more, perhaps applying or coming to visit or whatever. So that was good. We have a lot to work with. We just finished 2 showcase days, which replaced what we used to do, which we call a tour day, where in tour days we would take the kids around and show them all the shops for a few minutes. This showcase day presentation is very different. Kids, based on those cards, pick 2 that they really want to visit for half an hour each. They get a much more in-depth experience. They get to try some of the things. I think it went really well. We saw a 20% increase in participation from last year to this year to the amount of kids that have come. We're holding our open house on this Sunday. I'll leave some posters with you if you want to take one home and post them up somewhere, or whatever you want to do with them. We've already had about 50 people sign up, and it's been a great learning experience for us. I think, like I said, we have a lot to work with. There's lots of things we've learned in terms of how we can adjust our own efficiency, and I think we'll have an even bigger turnout at these events next year. Certainly a learning curve for all of our middle schools, as typically they would just tell us who's coming. This time we kind of turned the tables around a little bit and told them this is who we're expecting to come. I'd have to say that I thought our middle schools overall were extremely gracious in terms of the amount of time that they gave us to present, wanting to work with us, trying to understand, the newness of the system. There's a difference between saying, oh yeah, we think 11 kids are going to come on the bus, and us saying, we need the exact names of who. We need that on a timely basis. So that was a whole change of operation for them too. But overall, we've got 30 active applications as we speak using a new online system. And we'll see how it goes after Sunday. Hopefully we'll get a few more, hopefully we'll just start rolling.
Well, I attended the one in Carlisle. It was spectacular. I would have come, if I was ready to sign up. The students were excellent. One is from Belmont. Not the herpetologist, but the other one. One was from Carlisle. He knocked the kids out. And I just thought they were wonderful. I thought your presentation was great. The format of it, which is, so here's what you could get if you go to your regular high school, and here's what you could get. Check, all those things, and here's a bunch more if you come to Minuteman. I thought it was very impressive, and I think you were good, and also you've learned a lot through that consultant. But I was very glad I went, and I hope a bunch of kids come.
Jennifer.
I attended the one in Lancaster as well, and I was impressed. I was hiding in the back. My daughter told me she was she said, don't let people see you. Of the 13 and some odd cards you got, how many kids actually came for the showcase? Do you have a number?
Yeah, we're working through that right now. You want to know Lancaster?
Well, MSF, the bus was pretty full, but that was right.
Yeah, we had 12 kids make it, which was good, which is a little less than half of what signed up. And, again, we know we're going to get kids out of Lancaster, so that's one of those where I think the newness of the system for the guidance counselor, she had a lot of questions, we were trying to work that out, and I'm really looking forward to next year, because now that I know and she knows what to expect, I think we're going to be able to generate more.
You had 1,300 students sign up for the show, or give you a card for the showcase. Then they have to get permission from their parents to come. So how many kids came the last 2 days?
The working number total we have right now is 364. One of the things we're going to do, we did it this year, but again, it's part of that efficiency learning curve, is we did send out a letter to all of the parents to say, if your child has signed up for this event, this is what this event is, please turn in a permission slip to your office. We know that letter has to get out earlier than it did, and one of my tasks, once we're done with the open house, just in talking with the guidance counselors at the middle schools, I'd really like to get their specific permission slip. We sent out a sort of a generic one to try to drive kids into the guidance office, but we really, I get it. Lexington has their own specific requirements on their permission slip, which is different than Needham's. So, fine, we're going to ask them, can I get a PDF of that? And next year we'll have an ability to send that same sort of cover letter with the exact permission slip that they need to sort of encourage it along. If we do it in a more timely fashion, I think we're going to get more out of it. I know we're going to.
I think it's great you had 360 some odd come. Last year you had 300 sign up for the showcase. Do you have any idea how many came for the 1 or 2 days?
Last year, over the 2 tour days that we had, it was 302. So this year, comparable is 360.
So we're just a little above last year's number.
About 20%.
Thanks, Jeff. I take it that these presentations were made only in the member towns, middle schools?
Correct.
And so, given the information and given what you have done historically, is there any way to project with that level of interest how many might end up actually enrolled?
We have a February 1st application date this year, so we'll know by then. This is the first time we've had a hard application date for preferred action. So we'll have much better sense on February 1st, but I think it was about 1/3 of the students who came last year actually were enrolled and counted on October 1.
Jennifer.
I think getting the school's permission slip is a really good idea. Getting it to the parents more than 3 days before their kid is going to go is huge. there was a general announcement that said you had to go to Ms. Garland to get the permission slip from her, and that, I think, you know, eighth graders are not all that motivated to do extra things. So I think that would be really helpful to have something, because I think a lot of parents didn't even know their kids had filled out the card and didn't know it was even a possibility.
Very good. Thank you very much, and we look forward to following this process throughout the next months. So, as you know, we're going to be taking a rather important vote today, and in order to get to the point where we could take this vote, there's of course a very long process, and the members of the school committee alone do not have the expertise to help us through this process. Obviously, we have some experts that we hire to make use of, but behind all of this is a building committee that has been working for how many years?
Building committee for a couple of years. Volunteers with expertise that allow us who are not experts, like I had trouble screwing the light bulb. That's basically where I am. So expertise in these areas, so we can have confidence in moving forward and we can have our questions answered. So I'd like is for the members of the building committee here just to identify themselves briefly so we can thank you. So just, who are you and where are you from? Simon Bunyard, why don't you stand up? And where are you from?
Foxborough.
Thank you.
And Don Lowe.
John Lowe from Bolton.
Thank you.
And Mike Majors, before you sit down, who's on the committee, where are you from, what community?
Calvin.
Thank you.
And Jerry Leonard is here, and you're from?
Carlisle.
Carlisle. So
Well, thank you.
4 minutes
Thank
so
you
far,
very
and
much.
just a few more.
Well, there are a couple at the table. There's, of course, Jack Weiss, and there's Ford Spalding and Alice DeLuca, but you know, you kind of have to do it because you're kind of on the school committee with these people are not on the school committee. It is really so important for you to be here and to help us out with having the confidence to move forward in this very challenging project. Now, it says here, comments from the chair, and I may have a comment or two, there's someplace better on the agenda for that, so we're just going to skip right over that and go straight to the school building committee report. Ford and Ed, what do we do?
Well, I'll just follow the agenda, and I'll talk a little bit about our community outreach. Today we met with, for 2 mornings and 1 evening with selectmen, other town officials. We had about 93 in attendance to that, so that was tremendous attendance. We've also had community meetings in Belmont, in Concord, Lexington, Bolton, and Stowe were linked together. Lexington, Lincoln, Acton, we met with the Board of Selectmen. Needham has a Needham Study Committee, and Sudbury. So those are the communities that we had. All but one were evening meetings, and one was an afternoon meeting. We also had the opportunity to attend the meeting in Weston Selectmen, so we did attend that to hear their issues. We had a meeting yesterday here to talk with the selectmen town officials about what voting method we should go through. I have to add that that was not really the topic the selectmen wanted to talk to about. They ended up talking more about the regional agreement than they did about the building or the voting process, which I thought was disappointing. And we had the advisory council meeting here, Ed, which you hosted with Lieutenant Governor Polito, and we had a presentation at that. So we've had, I think, pretty good outreach over the last month or so. And I want to thank everybody for helping. Kevin, you were a big help. Steve, I mean, you were a great help. And Frank Cannon from Concord just walked in, who's also on our building committee. Behind me, we have our design team, and I'm going to ask them to come up to the front of the table. We're going to ask these people to move and come up to the front of the table. So come on up. We have Paul Adamov, who is going to be basically presenting from Castle Booze. We're going to have Ryan Salawana, who is also from Castle Booze. Marianne Williams, as you know, is our project manager, and Dale Caldwell from Skanska. So if you all would come up, that would be great. And Carmen here, and Carmen Reese from Concord is here. She's a selectman and also on our committee. The committee really is invaluable. We also had about 5 or 6 members of the committee that were focused on 2 issues, mainly the non-MSBA study report, and also worked with the design team over the last month as we came to the stage where we're at now with the completion of Module 4. Simon Bunyard, I have to really thank. He, and I'm just signaling him out only because he was at almost every meeting that I was, both in Boston at the meetings and also down in Foxborough. So I really thank Simon. I learned a lot from Simon, and I think he was very helpful to the design team. Where we are is, last night the building committee voted unanimously to recommend to the school committee that we move from Module 4 to Module 5. Tonight you are going to have that same opportunity to make a recommendation to the Mass School Building Authority. The Module 4 submission goes to the MSBA on December 1. Those documents are going to be put together from this evening onto December 1, so Thanksgiving week and weekend is going to be a busy time for our project manager team because she and her office of the teams really have to certify what we're doing. Then on January 27, the MSBA board will vote on whether to move us to Module 5. As you all know, Module 5 is when we go out to the communities asking for a yay or nay vote on the project. Assuming we're going to get a yes on that, no doubt we will, then we move to Module 6, which are the construction drawings. That takes about a year's process. We will be hiring a general contractor at the beginning of that stage, and that firm will be working with us on the construction drawings. When you do that, you have less chances for error. When you have the project manager, you have the general contractor, and you have the architects all working in sync. We then would start, after that, going to Module 7, which is the actual construction process. And then Module 8, we're moving into the building, and that is the closeout. That takes some time. We are going to tell you that we have the base eligibility of about 40% of eligible costs. We think we are getting it up to 44.5%. That's of eligible expenses. When you take a look at what the actual fee of the total project, that's going to be, I think they'll correct me if I'm wrong, but closer to 33%. But I think that's terrific that we were able to almost get to the maximum that we possibly could. And that's because Minuteman has done everything we possibly could to meet whatever MSBA wanted. Because if you want their money, you better play their game. And that's sort of the way it works. As you know, June 30th of 2016 is the date that we have to have this completed. If we do not get a yes and we do not have it completed, we then will leave the MSBA process and we will be on our own to figure out where we go from there. You have seen the reports that we have produced that are telling us it's about $100 million of renovation over a period of anywhere from 1 to 10 years. So we will know the exact number because what the school committee would have to do is go out and hire an architect and go through the whole process again and bear those expenses. So let us tell you where we are now, and I'm going to turn it over to the design team.
Okay, sure. Do I have to speak into the microphone?
Yes, you really.
Okay.
And I won't follow the wall. We're going to sit down.
Sit down. All right. I'll sit over here.
We should have given you a model here so you could walk.
I can't do this thing. Good evening. My name is Brian Solerwater. I'm the principal architect for Castle Booz Associates, and with me is Paul Domino. Paul is really taking the brunt of our 8 or 9 week journey, which we had since Module 3 was approved by the MSBA. We really had a lot of work to do because it was time to make your building a real building, correct? And that's what it is. We had to be on budget, and we had to get our square footage in line and meet all the MSBA requirements in order to get you the biggest amount of reimbursement for all your districts. The journey included meeting with teachers, working with the superintendent wherever he went, and really massaging the footprint of this building. It's different than what we saw when we looked at the 3 options early on, when we were before you back, when was that, early summer maybe? Yeah. So with that said, the journey continues. We did a budget along the way, and when we first looked at our building and what the budget was here, and it really had to be here. And so over the last 3 weeks, things moved, and we're proud to say we have a building on the square footage that we promised, and we have a building that will meet your budget. And Mary Ann, of course, with Skanska, helped us all along the way. She was really the one that kept us all in line. With that said, I'm going to let Paul present what we have, and Mary Ann, I'm sure you're going to say a few things, and we'll open it up to questions.
Well, Paul comes to the microphone. Castle Booz has been incredible. They've had a staff of I don't know how many people, but not only inside their staff, because I've been down to their office and met most of them, but also it's the subcontractors. So all the subcontractors who come in who are going to be working on the building. So I don't know how many of you had 20, 30 people working on this, really working around the clock. And when I say around the clock, they're early in the morning and they're late at night. Even on weekends, I'm seeing work being turned out by them. So it's an amazing job they've done. Just over, we talked about the size, the cost was here and we brought it down to here. They used 2 cost estimators, one from brought in by Castle Booz and the other cost estimator brought in by Skanska, and they ended up being pretty much the same, but they weren't the same as we were going along. And we took $30 million out of the budget, $30 million from where we were to get down to our budget. Time is money, and this project is extended out for a long period of time. Every day that we're not actually building and now getting a bid is costing us money, and that's part of what we had to shave out. We had to shave out things that were going to reduce that cost. We did not incur any sort of deficit in the education program. What we were been able to take out were things that didn't really affect education, but I'll let Paul go through that.
Sure. Can you hear me? I think it might work best if I sit here. I have a pointer I can point to the slides and such. So I think first to orient everybody, this is the site that we have. The existing building is here. And, we have Merritt Road across the north. National Park is to the north, our northern boundary. And the site is to the west near Mill Street. So the big plan is to build a new building.
This is not your fingers blocking.
Thank you. I'm tired. Build a new building on the western portion of the site, which has topography. It's not a flat site. And then we would demolish the existing building there. So, new building on the western edge of the site, and we have some topography to deal with. Other site constraints that we have are all these hatches and red lines represent wetlands and vernal pools and things we need to stay away from. So if you can follow my cursor here, this red line right here is Wayland Court, because what we did is we tucked the new footprint of the building in here between, as much as possible, between these pinch points, which are the wetlands, as best we could. So that's sort of the envelope we had to work with. We also have neighbors on Mill Street we're conscious of, some of the view sheds from the Park Service and on Mill Street. And let me start going through the slides and orient you with the floor plans first, and then an image, a couple of images that we've come to. And I just need to remind everybody, this is schematic design. There's another design phase after this. So this is this effort to date is to get, as Brian said, project scope identified, and with Marianne's help, a budget established, and to submit that to MSBA for the next module. After that, we'll take this to the next level. There's more design work to be done. But to date, we've identified a lot of the systems within the building, but not necessarily detailed everything. That comes in future design phases. So a lot will change moving forward, but we've identified the systems that need to be part of this facility, and working with the staff how that wants to work. But we have more work to do. So, Mary, do you mind just looking at the slides, arrow, please?
You can actually do it online if you want.
Oh, I can't, you're right, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, the building is oriented primarily, it's not shown on this existing conditions drawing, but it's oriented north-south, with this being the north and this being the south. So, we've organized this building into two academies, the Life Sciences and Services Academy, which is to the south, and the Engineering and Construction Trades Academy, which is to the north up here. And as I mentioned earlier, the site, it has some topography. So we're going to step the building from low point, which is down here, to the midpoint, and then up to the uppermost portion of the site here. So it's kind of a terraced building. Think of it conceptually as a two-story building that steps up the hill. For argument's sake, it's approximately 5 feet at a time. So that's how we're dealing with the grade that we have to deal with. And by doing that, we believe we're making a smart choice in terms of cut and fill on the site. We're not spending a lot of money excavating the whole hillside to get the building in there, and you won't realize that in any kind of educational value. So it makes a lot of sense. By the time we get to the northern portion of the building here, the hill will be carved, we'll carve into the hillside approximately 10 feet. So I mentioned earlier, this is where the shops are, right? And a lot of that will be, the shops will be on the back side, and I'll show you in a moment. It'll be screened from the park in Mill Street to a certain degree, because it's essentially 10 feet lower than the natural topography here. The topography actually keeps going up, and then it drops back down to Mill Street. So
we're dealing with ledge up in that area,
ledge too,
and deep down in the lower area.
So yeah, our starting point is the low point, and we're going to work our way up the hill, because we don't want to get into the ledge. Well, we will, but try to minimize that as much as possible.
I think it's worth noting that just from the lower part of the site to the higher part of the site is a 20-foot differential.
That's correct.
So that's why there was the need to really step it up.
So I'll try to quickly walk you through the plan. There's a lot of information here. We've been working on this for a while, and but I'd like to give you the highlights. As I mentioned earlier, this is the Life Sciences and Services Academy, the green, and those include, what we basically have the shops. The shops and labs are on the main level, and then above this are the classrooms. So in the school currently, you may have a shop on the main level here, but have a classroom 3 stories up. So we've made a conscious decision to limit that. So we're trying to, within each academy, this being Life Sciences and Services Academy, you have your shop space or lab space here, and directly above is your classroom. So so you're not traveling all over the school normally. These are the shops and labs. We have a cafeteria, food services, the service entrance of the building where we have a loading dock for the cafeteria. We have a conference center here and a restaurant. Think of this little piece right here as kind of a retail component. Public would be able to enter the front door, which is main entry right here, and actually access the cosmetology suite and the event center and the restaurant without mixing with the school population. So we've isolated this little retail piece from the school, has its own circulation, we don't need to mix with the students. As I work up here, I mentioned already, this front main entry with administration and security right at the front door. Everybody comes through the front door. It's our controlled security point right there. We have guidance.
We spend a lot of time with security. As you can well imagine, in school today, when you're building a new school, we're spending money on security because we have to, and that's the whole control point is going to be there to limit the amount of people, or the access point for people to get into the building.
The challenge here in this particular project was trying to mix that retail component of cosmetology and a restaurant and sort of a event center, trying not to mix it with the student population. So that was a challenge, but that's our solution currently right here. So this is all at one level, the low level. If you go to I'll go to the next slide here. So here's the mid-level, which is I'll start at the top. This is the shops for engineering, construction, and trades. And there are things like automotive, electrical, plumbing, carpentry. We have a warehouse. And what's the technical name for that program?
Logistics and supply chain management.
So the thought is, this is where students can learn how to inventory and distribute products right to the school. But it also doubles as a storage for the entire facility. And what we plan to do is have a covered canopy out here so that we can store raw materials such as lumber, plumbing, fittings, and things like that outside but under cover, and then bring them directly to overhead doors right into the shops. So we kind of located that strategically to serve the school and the surrounding shops. So we have shops on the main level, some classrooms and robotics, automation, and all the dark green squares here are related classrooms. Each shop has a related classroom. So if you are in the electrical shop, your classroom is right here. We plan to add a lot of glass from the corridor system into the related classroom and also into the shop, so you can see. It's very transparent. You can see what kids are doing. Once the activity, it's sort of a dynamic space. You can see what kids are building. As we move down, the blue represents the gymnasium and auditorium. So we basically have two academies, one on the south, one on the north, and in the middle is all the shared spaces, such as the gymnasium and the theater and the main entry and cafeteria. So the gymnasium has its own support spaces, such as locker rooms, fitness room. This is again our mechanical area next to our food service. This is where we have the loading dock for food service and a lot of mechanical equipment back here. Again, the earth is going to be carved out a little bit over here, so we're going to try and get some landscape screening on this portion of the building. The theater has changed. This is probably the last change we made over the last few days. We've been squeezing that component of the building and still trying to meet the programmatic requirements of the theater. But we have essentially a big stage that's approximately 28 feet deep, 80 feet wide, and a fly loft that currently stands at 50 feet in our base bid. And so the thought is here, it's a theater. It's not a high school auditorium. It's a theater where students will learn the trade of rigging and sound and lighting design, so they can go either to college or they can go and work downtown in a professional theater. So it's not a high school auditorium. It's what's the technical name for that, Ed?
Well, it's multimedia engineering.
Yeah. So that's the intent of that space. And beside the stage itself, we have a sort of a black box theater, which up near, I think, close to 200 or 300 seats, multi-level, three-sided theater with a floor system that's left blank, that we could have flexible seating so the students could even learn how to set up the space into almost a theater and around with a thrust stage configuration, an apron stage configuration, which are just different shapes of the stage and where the audience sits. So they can learn all that. So it's really, this is really now everybody has a lab or a shop or a classroom. This is the theater shop. Think of that as a theater shop. When we have the stage itself and a curtain, excuse me, between, so we can actually have two functions going on, a classroom here and setting up for production on that side. So it's kind of a multi-use space.
Just so you know, the flight loft has been reduced in the base cost from 70 feet to 50 feet. So that has been brought down.
Yeah, and we're still working through what that means. I will go to the next level. The final level is the third level. And again, these classrooms serve the shops below. The white is the shop, the high bay shops below. These are the classrooms that relate to shops below. In the middle is the upper portion of the theater. It's the upper portion of the gymnasium, which is essentially a big empty space. And these are classrooms, art rooms that are centrally located in the school. A lot of these three classrooms aren't academy related. They're classrooms that all students need access. So we put them in the middle of the school. It made sense. We also have the art and design and visual communications suite here. This is an atrium space that you can look down into. At one point, we had circulation all the way around this atrium, but in our process of squeezing square footage out of it, we maintained the atrium itself, but squeezed out a lot of circulation over the last few weeks to save money. Again, as Ford mentioned, we wanted to squeeze the building but not lose the educational value of the facility at the end of the day. So that's one of the things we focused on is the circulation that was fat.
And the atrium area really serves the purpose that you might want to talk about, but when the buses come in, the students have to have a place to gather.
Yeah, as they come in on the middle level, they'll be gathering in that atrium space, which is open. It's the cafeteria. There's a lot of, not a lot anymore, but there's other gathering areas down there, so it's a good way to control the flow into the building in the morning.
So again, big picture, we have two academies, and then we have a shared central space. And online, that central space, cafeteria, is where all that sort of cross-pollination happens between the academies. It's going to be an active space. We anticipate there'll be a wall of glass out here into a courtyard, so hopefully it's active. You can see we actually have a corridor here along the bridge where it's kind of elevated, and it all connects in the middle where the elevator is. And it's hard to see here, but we planned a stair system that connects this cafeteria level to the upper level. That we have a set of stairs. It's a big monumental stair. That's a real staircase, but half of it is sort of think of it as an oversized bleacher system where kids can congregate and collaborate in the middle of the school as one of those sort of breakout spaces where that kind of cross-pollination can happen. So it's kind of a feature that's tied into the elevator right in the middle of the school where a lot of things come together. So that's basically the layout. I'm not sure if I missed anything big.
Well,
yes.
What's the blue core facility space to the northeast of the atrium? Up to the right.
To the right.
This is, that's the media center, so sorry. Media center here, and we have guidance here, which we anticipate having a lot of glass on this outside corner. So that's one of the things we learned in our teacher interviews is the guidance want to be part of sort of they're at the crossroads of where the students would sort of travel, right? So we'll have a big glassy piece there for the guidance so they can be part of sort of the student life.
So, I understand the two academies. Where are the four academic classrooms? So the English and math, are they in the academies or are they in the central?
Yeah, English and math and science are in each academy.
They are.
And then the The classrooms there are things like language, AP classes that students from both academies may be going to.
Social studies as well.
Social studies, language.
And I guess your office, Ed, this is the business office, superintendent's office.
His office is not that whole space.
That's a suite.
The business office and the superintendent's office.
So that wasn't cut in the superintendent's office wasn't cut as you were trying.
Yeah.
It's getting smaller.
It's getting smaller, right.
One last piece I'd like to point out is, I'll go back one slide. Within each academy, these are the upper level classrooms of the Life Science and Services Academy. We have sort of a toilet, storage core with all the electrical closets in the gray. This green piece actually represents it's a breakout space where it's a flexible space where the classrooms can collaborate. So each academy has its own little special space that they can use. And we think of it, that academy, we could help identify that academy, their identity to be architecturally to be in that space. They could use it for collaboration. So each academy has that, which is great. But everything comes together in the cafeteria, sort of for the vision of the whole school.
So they can work on a project there,
Absolutely.
So logistically, all of the life science kids are going to have English and math together, and the engineering and trades kids are going to have English and math together. And those are never going to mix. You're going to mix just with the social studies and the languages and art and
theater.
For the most part, that's the concept of an academy. That those academic teachers would be teaching that curriculum in a way that's connected to those occupational areas.
So like AP physics is going to be in both academies?
Yeah.
Or-
Yep.
One thing I'd just like to comment on that's helpful there is when we were joking about administration, it's actually a little less than what it is in the and with that we've gone from about 305,000. We've gone from 305,000 square feet to 258,000 square feet. So those efficiencies and circulation and all of that is really allowing us, to pay for a new building, which would be less expensive than trying to rebuild this building.
I think Sharon, do you have
Yes, hi. That was actually my first question, because I know you've been squeezing it, and I've heard several numbers, so it's at right now 258,000. Correct. Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had was, Ed, you said the core classes will be taught in the academy, so they're going to be integrated into the, all of it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the concept of an academy model is that it's a deep integration of academics and vocational technical curriculum. So teachers are going to select, at some point, we have an academy design team of about 15 to 16 teachers that are working on how that's all going to work for us on a very detailed level. We've actually scheduled the whole school, not exactly this, but we've scheduled it to see how it works. But the idea is that science and math and English are going to be taught as it's related to those specific occupational areas.
So for culinary arts, it'll be somehow related to culinary arts and bringing in the literature in math and science.
Yes.
But making it relevant to those.
Yes.
That's great, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Judy?
I'm back to my stairs and elevator. There's one elevator, right?
Yeah, well, two. We have two. One in the theater and one in the center.
Yeah, the theater one's broken down.
Right.
It's not for. So my question is, they're stepping up these 3 levels, right? Two? Yeah, how do they? Yeah, is it ramps?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a
How do
series
they-
of ramps. The building's fully ADA compliant.
I've just been trying to figure out how they move around and go up and down.
So, because you're going.
I was getting a drink of water. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. You were going up, 5 feet roughly?
Yes, yes.
So there'll be a series of ramps. So if you're at the lowest level, you can, obviously from the parking lot, there's multiple areas of parking for handicap accessibility, all the walkways. So once you're in the building, you really get in a system of walkways, or you can take the elevators.
go into the center and up and down.
The students really don't use an elevator.
Yeah.
Handicap access students obviously would, or but basically that's why they built the ramp system they have, so it's easier for the students to get around. We had 4 elevators at one point, but again, as the days pulled back, we ended up with 2. One is going to be closer to a freight elevator, and the other is obviously going to be able to take any hospital equipment. So they're larger than just a small box.
But so some of us, after our finance, cannot go up and down ramps very easily. So
You'll take an elevator.
and I know I heard students or parents in Carlisle saying they wanted more accessibility, so more students would be eligible to come here. So they have to go to a central elevator or go up and down a ramp.
At this point, yes, correct.
So I'll try to wrap up this. There's a lot more to talk about. So one thing that Brian pointed out that I missed was there's a child development daycare one here, which has its own little separate entry as part of the curriculum, and it's almost part of the retail suite. It's a culinary. Someone mentioned culinary. That's the student culinary program that serves the public restaurant. It also serves the conference center. So it's located in Circle. Moving on. Here's where we are with the model and what it's starting to look like. We identified exterior materials in order, so Marianne, our estimators could budget it, we can work with Marianne to work with the budget. But the palette includes this sort of wood-looking color is actually a metal panel that we're proposing. It looks like wood in combination with glass, and this is the cafeteria. This white represents a different kind of curtain wall system called the cow wall, which is a less expensive version of big glass walls. We'll have brick and some cast stone. What we plan to do in general, this evolved over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, that's the cow wall panel right there. Is we plan to focus our energy and time in detailing a lot from this point of the building, sort of that point. Is where we focus our energy, time, money to develop that palette. And on the backside, when we get to shops, the greenhouses over here, back off on the sort of, not the quality of materials, but the selection of materials and the cost of materials. Again, you can see the grade here. Some of this will mask the shop overhead doors on the backside. This is the theater. This line represents a 50-foot fly loft I mentioned earlier. It's really, this model is currently showing a 70-foot fly loft. So if you can imagine if you chop that G-walk, that would be the 50-foot fly loft. That's the gymnasium, this is the auditorium, this is the Life Sciences and Services Academy, and the Engineering, Construction, and Trades Academy. So again, each academy has its own little special space. We're going to try and get some daylight into that little triangle. That's their breakout space. Here, and in the center of the building, it all comes together, is the cafeteria. And that's going to be full of paper.
When you talk about materials that we switched from, we had glazing, which I call glass.
Yep.
In that whole area, but now we're using this material you have over here, and the cost differential between.
Yes. This pure glass wall is $120 a square foot, and that cow wall panel is $45 a square foot.
I have a question on materials.
Yes.
Are all these materials you're using materials that have been around for a long time and are proven, will live for a long time and will avoid leakage problems, and will not have any allergy issues for students? So that we know that, you step down materials, that's great, it can save money, it does the same purpose.
Yeah.
But we have experience in the industry over a long period of time with these materials.
We do.
We do.
From the cow wall, which has been on the market for at least 40 years, and I've used it 28 years of my career, to brick. When did brick come into vogue? A long time ago. So there's brick, there's cast stone, there's glass. Everything has to be energy efficient. Your roof will be a single ply membrane, and it's going to be probably white because we have LEED requirements, right? Reflectivity and all that stuff. Your mechanical systems, we have to meet the energy codes and the air exchange codes. So all these systems, including the building envelope, are up to current standards.
You have to get leads, 2 points in the leads, and that's why we've got.
And low maintenance costs.
And low maintenance, correct. The metal wall panel, all that, it would look like wood, but there is a finish on it with a 20-year warranty on the paint. So, I mean, eventually in 40 to 50 years, you're gonna have to do something to the building. But
It won't last for 200 years.
it won't last for 200.
Last for 20 or long set.
The skin and the bones are good.
Okay.
But to your point, like, when you have a project like this, it's a 50-year building. That's the expectation when we're designing the building, the Mass School building.
MSBA requires.
It's a 50-year building, and then you also, in terms of energy efficiency, we're looking at 2 additional reimbursement points because of the way the building is designed. So we're, that's being vetted so that we're not doing anything to jeopardize that reimbursement. So durability and all of those things is part of the sustainable equation.
Really, the key is maintenance. It's built, a plan of maintenance to keep the things running and going.
Which we haven't done much of with
Well,
this.
which we want to help you put a plan in place, and you're gonna do it.
Part of our plan is to put a maintenance plan in effect for the MSBA, for our use going forward.
Yeah, and just to elaborate a little bit more on that, Kevin was able to confirm that Minuteman is going to receive an additional 1.75% reimbursement for the maintenance plan, which is frankly in my career and yours, it's the highest we've heard. Usually it's around, 1.25%. So.
And that's based upon our current maintenance plan.
Right.
So the state that we haven't been maintaining is in this state. We've been maintaining it to the best of our ability.
Right.
And MSBA has recognized our practices and procedures enough to give us 1.75 points, additional points.
Sharon.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One, I think you said this, but the land that's in red right on the Lexington border there? Yeah. No, just in red, just below that. Yeah, right there. What does that marking mean? Is that
That's a photovoltaic overlay district.
What does that mean?
Lincoln's photovoltaic.
What does that mean?
Solar. It's a.
Well, I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
The town of Lincoln, during its process of getting the demarcation as a green city or a green town, approached me 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was now, to take that section of tarmac, which is the largest paved area in Lincoln, and create this overlay district for photovoltaics. And what that means is that at some point, the district could install photovoltaics there, and we're actually preserving that in this new design so that it's an option. We've talked about it quite a bit. We're going to be seeking out at the appropriate time a program that we would evaluate at that time, because these programs change remarkably. I mean, Lincoln Sudbury put the photovoltaic canopies in there, and they did it at a time when it was very cost effective. Those programs change so often, no one's willing to commit to us 3 or 4 years out from this date.
Is that a canopy similar to Lincoln Sudbury on the table for consideration here as well?
Yeah, I think some of the infrastructure is in the base bid, the conduit.
Yes.
Some of the, as much as we could fit in the base bid for a base structure is in there. But the canopies themselves.
Right.
So it'll be TV ready in terms of distribution. It doesn't include all of the things that are aware of in Sudbury, but I think one of the things we should be mindful of is that there is a cap, an 8% cap for site work, and so we've already exceeded that without this. We've already exceeded that without
Right, so that's reserved for phase next.
So whatever is done in the future is
Yeah.
either going to be 100% cost to the district, or if there's a grant available, or a way that the utility companies might participate. I mean, these things are changing all the time. Grants come and go.
Right, thanks. And as far as access, do I see an access road that goes right around the entire building?
Yes.
Yes.
And then do we still make use of both of the 2 access points over 2A that we have now?
Yes, that doesn't change.
Okay, so they go
With
from
the
one,
principal access up from there.
right, that'll be primary, but we still have access
Use to that.
from the other to get, so we have 2 totally separate entrances and exits that can be used. Okay, and the lighting on the west side, that's gonna be the side that's nearest to Mill Street, right? Is there any sense of how that is gonna impact the people on Mill Street, like in the evening when we have adult ed classes at night, or?
Well, there have been discussions about not having lights shining out towards the neighborhood, more turning down towards entrances.
Yeah, I just mean the building is gonna be really bright, right, at night, with all the lights on?
Yeah, but if you think about it, the shops are back here, and then we have the theater, the gymnasium, locker rooms, and then service building is here. A lot of the classrooms are, east facing this way, with the exception of the life sciences and services academy. There's some lab spaces this way, and the greenhouses on the corner. I think a lot of the glasses, well, there are windows on the back, I can't see, but a lot of the shops are back here.
And then.
We have to pay attention to lighting for sure.
Yeah, right, well, that's, yeah.
But also something to consider, this hasn't been fully vetted, so I can only suspect that having cow wall versus glazing is going to soften the light.
Right.
And I don't know whether the plan is to put the cow wall across.
We actually did.
As a
About
clear
the shops,
store.
so it keeps a masonry wall and a low part of the shops with the cow wall top.
So that should have a big, different impact
So it would
on
really
it in the
make
shops.
more opaque.
And then finally, the actual reimbursement from the state is effective reimbursement rate is 33%, right?
Of the
Approximately, of the total amount, right?
It's gonna be 44% of the reimbursable.
Right, yep.
There are certain things that are in this account. In other words, as we said, the allowable allowance for the field for the exterior of the building and the grounds is what?
There's an 8% site cap, and the 8% is based on
Where it's gonna be
the
over 8%.
overall construction cost. So we're already at that, and we can actually exceed that. So-
Right, so my question is, I think the cost estimates that we've gotten so far are based on the higher percentage rate. Is that correct?
Actually, what we did is we filled in what they call the 3011, which is, this is a project scope and budget template that the estimate generates inside. So what we do is we take those estimates and we drop the information into the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And it tells us what's eligible and not. We have sort of-
Right, yeah, no, I understand that. What I mean
Formulas,
is,
but we
the
have
numbers
a
that.
general idea of what
Right.
we think's going to.
Right. What I mean is the numbers that have been given to the towns, that it'll cost the towns, that is based on the 44% of the total cost, right?
40%.
Yes, but
40%.
we've been clear about the fact that the reimbursement rate is on eligible costs. We've been very clear about
No,
that.
I understand that, I understand, I just.
Now we know what the eligible costs are. We finally have a good idea.
Right, right.
So those projections are gonna have to be adjusted, I think, to reflect what we have learned now.
Yes.
We learned that, yes.
Yes, so we'll be getting those new adjusted numbers at some point.
Carrie Flood.
For the design team and members of the building committee, I'm interested in knowing, other than the potential for impact on the educational program, which clearly we're trying to avoid, what were the criteria that were used in cutting back the project within the budget? How did you weigh, how did you determine it?
Let's get to that just in terms of our first goal was to say, how do we preserve the educational programs? So we started looking at floor to height in the building, and we were able to take out 2 feet across this wing through to this wing here. So we took 2 feet out all the way around, and it's like 4,000 square feet of facade. We were able to look at. We looked at the materials where, instead of spending $100 million per square foot, we're able to introduce other materials that were just as.
This is new today. This is different.
Okay, but less expensive. We also looked at circulation of the building to say, how do people move through here? And we actually were able to eliminate some corridors and some bridges and things like that by shifting some of the programs around. All it's with the intent of preserving the program, not impacting the number of vocational programs, still maintain the 16 vocational programs, and really just kept looking for the efficiencies there. And we also used the space summary guideline provided by the Mass School Building Authority, where you could look at the square footages there and to say, we're exceeding the guideline by X square feet in this area, let's tighten that up. Or, we're under here, and, maybe we can bring this one up. And it was really this tweaking and tuning that went on that we were able to squeeze out 25,000 square feet out of the building, which was no easy feat, and I can't take credit for it because these folks did it.
Well, I'll give the superintendent a lot of credit. He was a part of all those discussions, those meetings. He made some good decisions.
So to follow up on that, are there things that were cut that you would put back in if you had other savings or timing reduces the need for contingencies? Or is it really just the ad alternate that we would be looking at on this list that we just passed out again?
Well, that value management log was a guide for how to realize these savings. And if we didn't get to where we needed to exactly, initially when we had the 2 independent cost estimates, one was 21 million over, the other was 31 million over the budget. And so the first thing we needed to do was establish a reconciliation between them to say, okay, we feel good about the scope, the unit pricing is consistent, and then looking at what are the savings opportunities now that we sort of have a benchmark, a baseline of what the value is of the building as it was designed as a buffer for me. So one of the things we did since that point in time, we were able to confirm with the Mass School Building Authority that demolition is considered an eligible cost, which is helpful in the overall scheme, because that was a question up until that conference call on Friday with the MSBA. The building as designed right now, or the package that's going to go into the MSBA, has the cost of demolishing the building and doing abatement, but there isn't money there to generate the new fields where the existing building comes down. One of the things we're doing is, the level of accuracy becomes greater over time as you actually get into the design, that you get assumptions, that you do more research, etc. And we're always going to be looking at the opportunities, and prioritize that to say, gee, can we get the fields back into the project? So we're going to keep looking for efficiencies and savings, and find some more opportunities, like going from curtain wall to cal wall. Those are the things that we're going to look at so that we can have a project that everyone's going to love to have.
David Jarvis.
What's the square footage now?
258,000 square feet.
And you were able to take out $30 million in the cost?
Yes, 31 million.
To get down to 144, or did you squeeze it to 114?
To get it down to 144.9. 22,000.
Then, at your chart, looking at your chart, at the top of it, the green areas, and then the one with the stripes through it, that was bordered by, I think, Merritt Road and Route 2A. Am I correct?
Yes, this is Route 2A. This is Merritt Road.
And those green areas, is that property, that doesn't belong to?
That's on the other side of the road.
Who does that property belong to?
You said the national park.
That whole strip between the two roads?
Yes.
Yes.
There. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I have some questions about slide 23 of the October 2nd presentation that have to do with the costs to the towns. Is this the appropriate time and person to ask, or are we going to get to that in a few minutes?
The costs?
Yes, for example, we have the total project cost, which was just confirmed as at budget, which is 144.9. The state reimbursement on slide 23 was projected to be up to 58 million. So my question is, what's the actual number?
47 something to 33% of total project rate.
Okay, so the net cost also on slide 23 was projected at 86.9 million. What's that updated figure?
Those numbers we're gonna have to get to you, because it was just yesterday we got the numbers where we are now. So Kevin will be working with you to update all those numbers.
Well, okay, but if would it be correct to simply deduct the 47 from 144.9 and arrive at 98 million?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be the number?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that 86.9 is now 98 million.
Last night there was the larger piece of paper that I think you have there. Is that going to be distributed as well?
It can be, because I think that will tell us something about the gross numbers. Would you like to distribute that to communities?
Okay, if I could just continue on with this slide.
I just have some copies.
Where's the slide from?
This is from the presentation that was given to us, the town officials on October 2nd, 2015.
Yep.
Okay, so it's slide 23, page 12. The next item was an annual debt service estimate of 3.9 million. You probably don't have that estimate tonight.
As they said, they just got these numbers.
And
it's going to take them a few days.
okay, and then the last item on that is the annual tax impact on the median homeowner.
All that's gonna be redone.
All right, so when should we expect to have those numbers?
Soon after the submission on December 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah.
No, okay, that's right. I thought 7 and something.
Right.
Go ahead.
I'm on the building committee, and I've been attending all of these, I'll call it squeeze 5-pound bag, or 5 pounds of stuff into a 4-pound bag exercise. $30 million bust in the estimate sounds like a big number, and it is, but the process they went through was one that every project goes through. It's not, I'm not alarmed, you shouldn't be alarmed at that, the fact that it had to happen. We cut a lot of appropriate things out of the building that, quite frankly, I was surprised were in there in the first place. There were a lot of stone walls on the site, a lot of labor-intensive stuff, some pretty high-end facade treatments, a lot of glazing, glass walls, and stuff like that. And by taking a hard look at all of those design elements and coming up with smarter solutions, eliminating a lot of stuff, this is not going to be a Taj Mahal by a long shot, but it's going to be very functional, and a lot of effort was put into making sure that maintainability was still there. So just, I like to really point the example of this glazing panel, or the clear translucent fiberglass panel that was substituted for glazing glass walls. higher R value, much more energy efficient. You don't get the bright sun shining through into the spaces both inside and blinding everybody. So it was an excellent process, and we owe the architect and the whole team a big round of thanks for making it work. And I think we've got a great building. I'm really excited about this project. I'm not in the least bit worried that we can be very successful.
Something I just wanted to add to that, because it's not meant to be, we're always working with transparency here. But when those numbers were put together a year ago in February, basically we had a bubble diagram, we had space summary. Space summary said, okay, it's like a blocking diagram. These are all the sizes of your classrooms and vocational spaces. And then there was a multiplier and say, okay, then 1.5 times that, that's the square footage of the building. And so, but it didn't tell you which category in terms of the different disciplines that would make up that total budget. So, you know, as we keep refining, you'll see dollars go up or down in the glazing area. Maybe it goes up in the stone area and things like that. And maybe it goes higher in an ineligible area. Well, part of our focus in bringing the cost down is to look at maximizing reimbursement on what's eligible and trying to eliminate as much as possible on what's not eligible, because you're not getting the participation from the master building authority. So, you know, cutting back on stone walls and things like that in terms of the site, one of the things we haven't been able to fully vet it yet. We won't be able to vet this probably for another 3 to 4 months. It's requiring conversations with utilities. We're asked to have the conversation, but we may be able to shorten the distance on a duct bank, so to speak. Right now, it's over 2,000 lineal feet, 2,200 lineal feet, and if we can bring that down and cut that cost in half, that's a cost, one, that the MSBA was not going to participate in, and two, to be able to save that, we're not taking away from the program. So we're looking at all of those different strategies the same way as the building was cited, that the idea was, would have been nice if it was a flat site and we could have had the building down there. There's a cost to that. There's millions of dollars that could have gone into the ground, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted to keep it in the building in the program. So it's, you know, the transparency is there. We just keep vetting these ideas about how do we keep making it more cost effective, good building, solid program. And it's an iterative process. So this, we'll be back here again when we do our 100% design development estimate. And we'll be back here again when we do 60% construction documents, and then again 90% construction documents. And it's an iterative process that we need to go through the master building authority, because they know these things are going to go up and down. It's not constant. It's a snapshot in time.
We're also carrying a contingency that's higher than we would like right now. But that's what you do at the schematic phase. You carry the higher contingency. That contingency comes down as you move into the construction process.
And to your point, escalation as well. The sooner the project starts, I mean, if the design team was released February 1st versus July 1st, it's 5 months of escalation. That could save you anywhere between $3 to $5 million. It could save you $2.5 to $3 million on escalation, because that's what they're carrying when they're trying to project the cost at the midpoint of construction out about 3 years. And then also, if you're taking advantage of where interest rates are right now, again, that's another factor. So we're trying to look at all kinds of strategies for saving money for the project.
Jackie, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the photovoltaic overlay area. Is there a reason, like, would we have been able to consider asking Lincoln to have that area somewhere else and have the building built there, or would that not have been reasonable?
Given that I'm not familiar with the local politics of that, I'm not sure.
You probably couldn't have done that anyway, because of the wetlands, the stream that runs through there. There'd be no place for that building in that location without having to take down part of the existing building.
It is where the parking lot is. So,
Yep.
in that sense, I don't see another area where we have that massive parking like that,
Okay, and but you're saying the wetlands would have impeded that?
The stream that runs right through the middle.
Okay.
And to complicate things, Lincoln, Lexington line is right here.
Yeah.
So, straddling that, most likely.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, one other question, on this value management log, the VM1 that says the permits and inspection fees waived by town, was that waived or not waived, or what is
No,
that?
it's not waived, but, you know, projects that I've worked on, the Masco Building Department is actually a municipality. And they're not gonna pay you money, so you take money from one pocket, put it in the other pocket. So what that means is, most of the projects we work on, because they're cities, towns, or cities, they waive, like Winthrop Middle High School.
Oh, I see.
They waived
Sure.
the permit.
Right.
And so, you know, the permit fee for Lincoln is $10 per thousand. And so depending on the value of the trade cost before you do your markups and construction manager and all that, you know, it could be anywhere from 1.2 to 1.4 million.
Right.
That, wouldn't it be wonderful if that could go to school? You know, but that's not my call, but I'm saying that's what a lot of.
But you're seeing a check mark reject. That's still in that money.
That's still in this.
Those monies are still in that money. We rejected taking it out.
That's what I thought that meant. I just wanted clarification.
We didn't think we could do that at this time. But again, that's something that we're gonna need to talk to your town about.
I'd be happy to ask them if they'd like to pay that $1.4 million.
Well, you know, and the cost of building, the cost of building inspection fees.
Right.
I mean, but I think we, you know, that's a subject to be talked. As you know, we've asked the town selectmen to give us a list of some of their requests.
Right.
So we can vet that with our towns and with the school committee, building committee. But that's a factor that's still in the, like.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
You mentioned a contingency.
Yes.
Contingency fund, is that funding that's in the budget?
We have contingency so that there's a couple types of contingency. The construction manager has a contingency. We have a design and estimating contingency, so that as the design progresses, that contingency gets reduced, so that by the time the design is complete, we have the assessment that you don't need that contingency because we understand what the design is. And then for the construction manager, they have a contingency. You know, so for example, let's say they've been a part of the project and somebody missed something, they missed the scope. We have contracts that define how those contingencies can be utilized. So for example, if you establish a maximum price, which would be the amount of the contract with the construction manager, and let's say they bid the project and they think the project is gonna cost, I'm making up a number, 120 million. And by the time over, you know, an 8 to 12 week period that they're able to vet it with their subcontractors, do we have all your scope, can you meet the schedule, can you appropriately staff the project, etc. Maybe after they have all those conversations, they've come up with the cost of 119 million. That $1 million doesn't go back to the owner, it goes into a construction contingency. And this is pretty standard in contracts, public construction contracts. That $1 million is there so that when they go down the road, they say, hey, you're supposed to put that stone wall there, and that's, oh, I didn't capture that in my cost. Well, the construction manager will pay for that out of the construction contingency. And the other contingency is you have an owner's contingency.
Is there, within these documents, the total amount that you set aside as contingencies or individual?
Lower left box.
Pardon me?
Lower left box.
Lower left box.
So on the lower left-hand side, you'll see a construction contingency, which is the owner's construction contingency, for $1,191,000. And then you have the owner's contingency for $5 million. And the owner may say, you know, I have $5 million, What if we stop excavating and you find out that there's a cemetery, nobody was there? That would be an owner's cost to address that, as an example. That would come out of the owner's contingency.
Alice. Well, wait a minute, what's the total number? Does it add up all these numbers here?
Well, there are contingencies for different reasons tied to the contracts, but yes, you could add them up.
That would be the total.
There's two there, and then there's another one with the construction manager. But look for the word contingency, and you'll see there's a design and estimation contingency. So there's 4 of them there.
I have just one more question. Have you broken it down, and I don't see a breakout like for how much it's going to cost to build a theater and how much it's going to cost to build the greenhouses?
We have a 75-page estimate from Daedalus that breaks those out. It might not necessarily be broken out to say theater X dollars. It can be broken out by trade. The electrical, and they list all of the things that have to be.
This is the document we've been working with, and in there's pricing for absolutely everything. For example, you have in this one area signage under finishes for $140,000. They have unit costs. They have how many? So they've broken that down, every single expense that would go into the building. And so that's what they work with.
That's wonderful. I think that's important. My question is that within that document, that they say the greenhouse costs us this much, that the theater is going to cost us this much, that the gymnasium is going to cost us this much?
You would have to add up the components of it to get to that number for each
They're
of the
identifying it
spaces.
there by component?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Alice.
So if all of the towns, so if all of the towns were to choose to hold their town meetings in February, March, just for this particular vote, to hold a town meeting, we could save millions of dollars.
$3 to $5 million.
Yes.
It's just something we should think about.
It's the difference of perhaps having the fields wrong.
Right, it just struck me that the cost
We're
of
gonna talk about that a
holding,
little
the cost
later.
of holding a town meeting is cheap compared to that many
Believe
millions
you,
of
we're
dollars.
gonna be talking about that. That was my comment that I was delaying until later.
Well, sorry for thinking of it ahead of time.
Are we ready to put a motion on the table?
What was that?
You have to be very careful of the motion.
The motion is going to be made, and the motion is what the MSBA says the motion will be. In addition, it's a roll call vote, so the secretary will read off the names, and it's a roll call vote on that.
So, Ford, would you like to make this motion?
The school committee approved the recommendation of the school building committee to approve the schematic design and to authorize Skanska USA, the owner's project manager, to submit the schematic design materials to the Massachusetts School Building Authority on behalf of the Minuteman School District no later than December 1, 2015.
We have a motion and a second. We have been discussing this for quite a while. Are there any last minute comments on the motion on the table before we take a roll call vote? What was that? Yes, Mr. Weiss.
I shared these comments as Ford, Kevin, and Steve heard last week at our town meeting, and I just want to go on record and share with folks on the committee my thinking about this project. As many people know, I have been not against the building project, but against the process and the specific size of the building. I do believe that the process was flawed. I think we could have had a more collaborative process that was not one of what I perceive as Minuteman trying to jam through the largest building project as possible, but rather one that was more collaborative and involving town officials in what did they think they wanted the size of the school to be. I do believe that there's real enrollment risk here, and I really do believe that the school is too large. Our current member town enrollment is 382. We haven't crossed 400 member town students for the last 7 or 8 years. We haven't crossed the 525 that Minuteman projects will be at in 4 years in 25 years, and we haven't been at 628 member town students in this district since the 1980s. I do believe you can't attribute today's enrollment to the building or the negativity that some people perceive around the recent project. I'm concerned that we're building too large a school. But we are where we are. And I think the MSBA, who in my view had previously committed that towns would participate in that sizing decision, in my mind reneged on that, and I think that their comment that they would not approve a school of less than 600 is pretty telling. I think we could challenge that if we wanted to, but I think that there are real risks in doing that. If we vote no on this project, and I think tonight's vote is not only on the schematics, but it's actually a referendum on the whole project. If we vote no, we're faced with that prospect of potentially having to renovate. The MSBA just washes their hands and says thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to fund you. I have real concerns that the $100 million of proposed, or the estimated cost of the renovation, does not represent what the true repair cost would be, that there's a lot of enhancement costs built into that, but I don't know the specific numbers. I do think, however, that the $47 million is an important contribution from the state. I've been proposing for a while now to talk to the state about a different size facility. I do think if we were to go back in line, there's real risk about whether, as I said, the MSBA agrees, but there's offsets to getting back in line. The one that Minuteman has appropriately pointed out is if we're not grandfathered when we get back in line, there's a 9% reduction in cost. The other reduction that people have talked about is an increase in construction costs. And if they're running at 3% a year, and I think construction costs are actually running higher than that. If it takes us 3 years to get back in line, that's another 9% hit on cost. We could end up by saying no to this project, even in the best scenario of getting a smaller size school, end up with a smaller size school that is at no financial benefit. I think there's real risk to us as a district in ever collecting that facilities fee. I think I think I'm all for it. I think it's great, but we have heard that non-member towns are prepared to legally challenge that. No certainty as to whether or not they'll be successful in that. We have also, well, I don't know what we've heard, at $7,500 a head for those non-member communities, there is a big incentive for them to find other alternatives besides Minuteman. The facilities fee itself is a DESE regulation, as we have seen with the DESE's approval of non-member operating tuition. They're a political body that's subject to political pressure, and that non-resident tuition is going down. No certainty that the DESE couldn't change somewhere along that 30-year period where our debt service is outstanding their decision about the capital facilities fee. And lastly, but not least, the members of this body may, in all honesty, cave on that. If a Watertown says, sorry guys, we're not going to send our kids to your school if we have to pay $7,500 more a student, I can assure you that there will be discussion in front of this body about whether we can afford to let the $14,000 or $16,000 of tuition walk out the door, or whether we have to concede on the $7,500. So I think there's lots of risks in lots of ways here. But the bottom line, I think, is all of those risks do not offset the benefit of the $47 million or so that we are getting from the MSBA. And so from my perspective, as much as I wish and think we could have been in a different place in a way that is more, would have been more representative of what the member towns wanted. I think we are where we are, and I'm going to vote yes for the project moving forward.
David?
I've not agreed on the size of the school since the number developed. I think that it's an inflated number. I think that it institutionalizes a tuition enrollment that will not go away for 30 years. And at the current rate that we're going in enrollment of member town students, looks like we're going to have about 200 to 250 out-of-district tuition students that are underfunded, that are costing us today $2 million in increased assessments. I think Jack is well-meaning, and I think, though, the position that we're in is a fiduciary position, and I believe that my voting no represents the fiduciary interests of my town and their concerns. I think this is premature, and I'm going to vote no.
Sharon?
Well, sounds like we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. So, but I came into this process late, so I don't know all the conversations that went on around the sizing, so I'm not going to comment on that, except to say that I do think that once we have this fabulous new school, we will build it and they will come. I really think so. I think it's going to be fabulous, and Voc Tech is the rage. So, personally, I'm not as worried about the size, but I am worried about the tuition in district versus out of district, so I think it would behoove us to consider seeing if we could lobby the legislation to allow us to have one tuition for all in-district and out-of-district students. I know that's probably a long shot, but I think it would be well worth our efforts to look into that. And then finally, in terms of what Jack said about working with member towns, again, I haven't been in this project all that long, but I do think, considering the project is being proposed for Lincoln, and we all are aware of how bucolic Lincoln is and how hard our town leaders have worked to keep it that way, and our school building committee chair has talked to me a couple of times about how beautiful Lincoln is and how much he enjoys driving through Lincoln. And I get the sense that our town planners and selectmen and leaders have not been terribly involved in this process, and I think it would be in our best interest to try to engage them more and work with them to, I don't think we're going to meet the zoning requirements, but I think if we could engage them more in the effort, it would be a lot smoother and a lot more amenable to the town. So that's all. Thank you.
I think you all know that the leadership in Arlington would echo many of the concerns that Belmont has raised. We also, however, are absolutely committed to supporting vocational education. As you know, we supply about a third of the students here, maybe a little more than that now. And it's a really critical part of the opportunities that our students in town have. We are definitely looking forward to supporting a new building, a new governance agreement with this group. And we certainly are delighted about the improvement in the financial statements and management and so on. So I'm going to be optimistic and vote yes for the building on the assumption that we're going to improve several things moving forward.
Alice?
Also going to come as no surprise to anyone that I'm going to be voting for this very, very happily. The opportunity to leave things better than we found them is why I spend my volunteer hours as a hobbyist trying to improve schools. It's what I do with my spare time, is try to improve schools, and this is an opportunity to do that. And it's not depressing to me in any way. I
it's all on an even path towards success, and I see no reason to vote no. I'm so delighted to be able to finally take this vote. And as soon as I take the vote, I will be texting my son, who is almost 30, graduated from here. And he always says, when I go to these meetings, year after year, in fact, for decades now, he goes, "Go, Mom."
Is that because he's enthusiastic about what you're doing once he gets out of the house?
He lives in Washington, D.C., and makes more money than I do. And also, he would come here again.
David Horton.
I've been in favor of the project from its inception, and I'm certainly going to vote with the way Alice is describing this with great joy. We're at this point we can put our names to it. I'm looking at this. I have the feeling, and I believe that with all the initiatives that are taken to increase the enrollment and the great emphasis in the Commonwealth and also in the country about career technical education, the Minuteman in a new building is going to be sitting on a hill, if you wish. Also, I don't know about other communities. In Lexington, the enrollment is growing dramatically. If that's at all true in other communities, we have many more potential students coming from our member towns. Yes, there are so-called risks and whatever, but I think the school committee, and I think the school and the administration are up to the challenge of making this a school that creating a school and a program that's going to attract more people from the member towns.
Ford Spalding.
I've had the opportunity over the last 2 years, I think, to be in all of your communities. It's been a privilege for me because I've gotten to know most of your selectmen, some of your finance committee people, some of your moderators, a few of your citizens. I wish I knew more, but we don't seem to get a lot coming out to our meetings. But I think I can say from what I've heard, maybe it's through a filter, but I hear support for Minutemen and career and technical education. I hear that from everybody. I don't think I've heard from anybody saying that they don't favor this kind of education. I think this kind of education is important, that they don't favor Minuteman. They may have some issues with some things, but basically they recognize that this is an excellent school. It's done great things for kids. I also have heard, I don't think I've heard anybody say they're not in favor of the new building. Again, there may be some of those out there, but they haven't really expressed it to me. I agree that in some communities the building's too big. Some communities, maybe the process wasn't quite right. And there'd be some other, the regional agreement is still an issue. You know, I can't vote for the new building because we don't have a regional agreement. Well, the towns have chosen not to approve a regional agreement to date. So I hear a lot of good things out in the community. I think it's the right thing to do, to work with the state, to develop the best possible building that we can do for our future students. It's for our future students because they won't be in there 5 years from now is when they're going to be in there. Enrollment, we better do a damn better job than we're doing right now in enrollment. I'm not talking about the administration, I'm talking about us. I'm talking about our community leaders, I'm talking about our school systems. When I hear Arlington's going to have 1,000 new students in their system over the next few years, Belmont, I don't know what the number is, but I think it's up there. I think most of the communities are there. I think we, as a governing body, need to work harder talking about the positive things. I guess I look at a glass half full, but I think if we do that, that's going to be good for our kids. I don't think I agree with Jack. We can't walk away from this money. Will we get big? You know, there are a lot of ifs and wills and all that, but I think we can only go with what we know. I'm a believer. It's what I know is what's going to work, or what I hope works. So I think if we all work hard on this building, work for the success of the students, work with our community officials, work with our communities to understand what we saw tonight, I think we're going to have a new building approved by our communities. So I just want to thank you all. I more importantly want to thank your communities. They've been welcoming for the most part, and I thoroughly enjoyed getting to know some of the people, and some of them may even be becoming friends, especially in the Arlington and Belmonts where I've spent a lot of time. Thank you.
Yes, Dennis.
Thank you. First, point of clarification, we spent a fair amount of time talking about the efforts that were made to reduce costs, and one of the biggest items was a reduction in the floor area of about 25,000 square feet. I just wanted to make it clear that that does not affect the enrollment size of the school. We're still talking about building a 628 student school, notwithstanding the savings that were realized.
That is correct. The educational, they believe that my understanding is that the reductions in cost of the building were not at the expense of educational programs, and that the target enrollment has not changed.
Right, thank you. Now I'd like to speak to the merits of the motion. I support and have supported the construction of a new school. I think that our member towns should have the opportunity to approve it or not as they see fit, and so I will be voting in favor of the motion. I am concerned about the fact that I just learned tonight that the net cost to the towns has increased by about $12 million, or roughly 15%, compared to what we were told only a month ago. Now, I understand that to some extent it was a moving target, and you just learned these numbers yourselves, but I am concerned about the impact that news is going to have when we go before our towns for their approval. None of that changes my vote. I will be supporting the school. I will have some more comments when we talk later this evening about the manner in which we're going to seek that approval, and I'll reserve those comments for that time.
Carrie Flood.
My first meeting of this committee was almost exactly 4 years ago when I replaced another representative from the town of Concord who had joined the school committee originally because, in a nutshell, he thought he was going to be the voice of green engineering in the design of a new school. And quickly became very frustrated with the process and the political and governance and financial logs that were laying in the way. And I was drafted, coerced, I'm looking at Carmen, who's looking at the floor, to join this committee and work on that. I think that Minuteman as a district is infinitely better off than it was 4 years ago, not because of what I've done, but because of what the committee as a whole has done in focusing on exactly those kinds of issues, on what the administration has done, on what Kevin's office has done, the work of some of the people who have been on this committee in the last couple of years and have cycled off. A lot of effort has gone into all of this. I happen to be one of the people who worked really hard on the governance and financing model. I'm sorry it didn't work. You know, I wish it had. I actually end up wishing we had a larger school with a very different structure, a larger component of state funding that did not rest in the dogma of Chapter 70 and so forth, but radically different. That's not the case. We are where we are, and I absolutely support this project and will vote yes today.
Ladies and gentlemen, you want to laugh another. Okay, so
What line is it? Second.
So I'm going to not attempt to cut off this discussion on this particular topic. However, I am looking at Mr. Clock that says 20 minutes times past the allotted time, so just keep that in mind. Mr. Weiss.
This is not on the, I don't think it will impact anybody's vote, but I think it is a matter of disclosure, because I think as both a member of the building committee and the school committee, when people come up and say, were you aware that when you voted yes, yada, yada, yada? I don't think it was touched on except in a very brief fashion. It was a discussion within the building committee that got some more airtime. And there was a brief allusion to the ad alternates. Part of this plan and part of getting the project under the budget is eliminating the football field. So the Minuteman School will have no football field. Now you can argue that that's not a critical part of the academics, and I think that that's right. But sports and athletics, I know from my experience in my town, have a way of creating an emotional, visceral reaction within our communities. And so people ought to be aware that absent finding $4 million of cost savings elsewhere, and with the full recognition that that money won't be reimbursed by the MSBA, the vote that we take tonight could end up leading to a school that doesn't have a football field. And that just is what it is, and people ought to be mindful of that.
There are two other people I just want to introduce from the building committee because they're now here. Is Marianne Cooley, who's in the back. Marianne is a selectman in Needham, has been very active in the building committee. She's very good at sending me emails and saying, have you thought about this? Maybe she says it sometimes in some other tone, but she's a good friend, and I get to see her in Needham every once in a while at a bagel place or somewhere. And Dana Ham is also in the back of the room. Dana is been invaluable to us again. He's a graduated Minuteman in welding, and he has been director of facilities in Lexington and schools in Lexington and in Cambridge, and he is now the director of facilities for the new casino that's going in Everett. He is a Minuteman star, but without embarrassing him, thank you both for your service, because I thank the others. So.
Very good. That brings us to the vote. Now, we have to take a very formal roll call vote. I have this scary looking form in front of me. What's going to happen is I think that I will call your name, probably mispronounce it in your community, and I'd like you to answer in the manner that is on the form. If you want to vote in the affirmative, when I call your name, say in favor. If you're opposed, say you're opposed. If you want to abstain, say abstain. And if you're absent, say absent in a loud voice. And I'm going to call you not in the order you are on the table, but the order you are on the sheet, which is alphabetically by count.
Jeff, could you describe the vote, please?
The vote is, you want to repeat the vote, the motion that's on the table?
What will pass it or not pass it?
A majority, a simple majority in favor. Okay. Of the people here. This is not a two-thirds. Two-thirds vote usually means a simple majority. It's the two-thirds vote that at this time requires 11 positive votes, where we have a two-thirds, meaning two-thirds of all community, regardless of who shows up. So 11 positive. This one is just a simple majority of the people here. Okay. So again, in favor, opposed, abstained, or if you're not here, absent. So Kim North of Acton. I heard her say absent. Very good. Sue Scheffler of Arlington.
In favor.
Jack Weiss of Belmont.
In favor.
David O'Connor of Bolton.
In favor.
Vince Amoroso from Boxborough.
In favor.
Judy Taylor of Carlisle.
In favor.
Carrie Flood of Concord.
In favor.
Ford Spalding from Dover.
In favor.
Jennifer Leone from Lancaster. Leone.
In favor.
I'm going to put a notice here. David Horton from Lexington.
In favor.
Sharon Antia from Lincoln.
In favor.
Jeff Stuhlin from Needham is also in favor. Alice DeLuca from Stowe.
In favor.
David Mangeris from Sudbury.
Opposed.
Mary Ellen Castagno from Wayland. Doug Gillespie from Weston. I see 3 absents, 1 opposed, 12 in favor. Does that concur with the recorder? And does that add up to 16, which would be good? Very good. The motion passes. report.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you. I know you've worked hard on this project. You've worked hard in your decision. This is sending a great message to the MSBA, which is a big, big help for all of us. You've also, as Vince alluded, you've allowed your towns to now take a vote. And I think that is important, that you're allowing your citizens by saying yes. And you're allowing this project to move forward for the future of the school. I also, again, not only do I want to thank the building committee, but I want to thank those people behind me, the design team. I know the effort they put into it.
Now, my understanding is, in order to submit this to the MSBA, it requires us to pre-approve the minutes, which is never pleasant, but we can do it.
That is correct, because they have to be part of the submission.
So, Mr. Spalding, would you like to make that motion as well?
Sure, glad to hear it. That the school committee authorize the recorder and secretary to finalize minutes of this meeting as approved for inclusion to the submission materials. We did this last night. It's a formality that has to be done,
I have a second. Discussion of the motion on the table. No. Benjamin? All in favor of the motion on the table? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That ends item 6.
Just an administrative question or request to save those of us from trying to photocopy these handouts on the savings and the budget. Could we get them sent electronically to Liz and have Liz just send it to us, whether it's PDF or
Which documents?
The two handouts tonight from the design team on the cost and the cost savings.
Is there any trouble with scanning them and mailing out?
They can be saved as a PDF,
Yeah.
you can just send it as a PDF.
Great. Okay.
Just be nice.
Is there sufficient language, particularly on the one that's the cost estimate, that would say it is an estimate at a point in time with all these contingencies?
These are all numbers that are at a point in time. I think your folks in town are going to understand that. They've all been through building contracts. As a matter of fact, they've been through building in their own home and they know what that's like. So the key is when we vote at town meeting, when we take a vote, it's going to be no higher than 140.9. So 149.9. So that's the number that we are going to have to stay under and cannot go over without going to a town meeting again. And last projects I did, we were on time and under budget.
Okay, so superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in your packet, there's a listing of the recent meetings that we've had. They've gone over. Ford has reviewed a lot of them. I wanted to make the committee aware of the Watertown study. The Watertown study, which I don't think I've mentioned before. We had a group of Watertown parents come to the administration to me 2 or 3 weeks ago, asking some very specific, very pointed questions about the impact of their town joining the district. Kevin and I discussed it, and we contacted Dave Tobin, who's a financial expert in regional school finance, and he's working on an analysis of that. We've seen some historical preliminary information from Dave Tobin. Now we're asking him to use our updated projections that we now have from the schematic design and the 3011 form to look at what would it cost for Watertown to be a member 3 to 4 to 5 years into the future. I've already been in contact with the superintendent of Watertown, and she has, I guess the word is cooperated with the study. Business manager of Watertown has been in touch with Kevin and with Dave Tobin. They've been very open with us about their costs, what they pay for. There's a lot of moving parts in how it works. There's also some things that change year to year, and we're trying to take those into consideration. Or hopefully have something, Kevin, in a week or so, that we'll be able to share with Watertown and with the parents. The parents are very concerned about the change in regulation. That one, that the capital fee would prevent the kids from coming, which it may, if this town refuses to pay it, or if there's some other legal action, which was alluded to earlier. But more importantly, they're concerned that the change in regulation under admissions, that we are required to accept member district students before any out-of-district students. There were rumors going home on the bus that Minuteman wasn't accepting any Watertown students beginning now, which is not the case. We've also had some issues with Watertown not allowing us to talk to middle school students this year. Over the last 12 years, we've had unfettered access, and that was cut off, which parents found out about. So anyway, we're trying to help Watertown and giving them some information, and we'll report that back to you next meeting. Mr. Mangeras?
So is there a memo of understanding that you've traded with Watertown and that they sent to you?
No.
I understand that there's going to be contested mayoral race in Watertown.
No, Watertown doesn't have a mayor. They have a city council. There's a new mayor.
I'm thinking Waltham, I'm sorry.
There's a new mayor in Medford, which is interesting. And her son graduated from Minuteman. I'm going to talk to you about Module 5. I just have a few slides to go over, and I'm doing this from a little bit different perspective. We're going to have a good discussion about this, and I think we'll have another discussion on December 1st, which I've asked the officers to consider having a special meeting on December 1st. And I wanted to take some time to give you my perspective of where we are with this project. There are educational priorities. If I stand up, can you all hear me okay? I kind of have a louder voice. I'm going to talk to you very briefly about these from the superintendent's perspective. Okay? I'm going to take some leeway in doing that because I am the educator that you've hired to guide this school through the next few years. And we've been doing some excellent work. We've got a great team in place. We're going places I could have never imagined we've gone. And we have a really big decision to make. And I want us to talk about some of that. From my view, we have two major issues. Our accreditation is at risk. We must restore that accreditation. We want to implement a very exciting educational program plan that talks about an academy model that integrates career and technical education and academic education in a very powerful and effective way. We want to expand our dual enrollment with post-secondary institutions. When we talked to people in the district about the importance of accreditation, it was clear. 92% of the people surveyed felt that it was important or very important that our school accreditation remain intact. Our academy model, I mentioned earlier, we have an academy development team. I've got a group of 15 or 16 teachers that are very excited about this model. We're studying it. We're getting together on a regular basis. We're visiting places that have implemented this. And we're going to have an implementation plan in place by the end of this school year. We're supporting 19 career majors in high demand at this new school. We're addressing the skills gap through our Commonwealth, a very important economic development component of what we do for a living here. This issue about the new building is the most affordable and it safeguards our accreditation. You've seen this plan many times. The financial realities, from my point of view again, delays have already cost us a significant amount of money. Mary Ann was alluding to that earlier. We took 2 years off of this process to try and fix the governance structure. Didn't work. The escalations, the contingencies that we now facing are reflecting that 2-year delay. Continued delays are costing us more money. Mary Ann mentioned $3 to $5 million if we were able to really start this in February or March. Interest rates are at a historically low rate. Kevin worked with Unibank to figure out what would be the advantage of capturing the value of these interest rates in a staged way as we're allowed to borrow money. And the premium that we would be getting in that would be a minimum of $2 million. The state share is at risk, and repairing the building costs more than building new. Public perceptions. The poll we did shows there's a lot of support out there right now. 68.5% of the people responding supported. Only 8.5% negatively felt negative about the building. And we have a large component that are undecided. So we have a lot of public support for a new building right now. The greatest concern people had about a new building was their taxes will go up. And now we have to, I share your concern, Vince, about having to go back, and now we've got the most current information. That rate of $606.67 to $116 in Lancaster is probably going to go up, to 10 to maybe 125. It doesn't do our credibility any good, but there's a great level of support out there right now. The tax impact, this is going to change. We've talked about this. When we ask people what's the most important thing that influences your vote, the impact on kids was the #1 issue. The impact on kids was in their minds, was the #1 issue that they wanted to address. You know how encouraging that is to a superintendent of a large district? The second thing, of course, was taxes, and then it goes on from there. I'm a little concerned about this impact on jobs. We got to do a better job of voicing, explaining, articulating our connection to workforce development, economic development, and how our school addresses the skills gap. I had a meeting a few Fridays ago in the morning with 7 legislators, just a quiet meeting, and they are very much in tune with this. Lieutenant Governor Polito was here. That's all she talked about, and how important our school is in addressing the skills gap in this Commonwealth, which is significant. We looked at, we asked our local guidance counselors in our 16 towns, what do they think about Minuteman? There was a tremendous amount of support for Minuteman from our middle school guidance counselors. They're seeing the tide change. 81% agreed that perceptions of voc tech ed are improving. 76% felt that more kids would apply. 71% that in their own town there'd be more students willing to apply. This was just our 16 towns. Every town was represented, and when you looked at the total number of guidance counselors that are employed in our 16 towns, 50% responded to this survey. And George was talking earlier, we had 1,366 kids this year raise their hand and want to come to Minuteman. We only had 365 come in, but that's still a 20% increase over last year. And the interest level, when you look at it on the basis of the total population of 8th graders overall, 44% of the 8th graders in the district wanted to learn more about our school. Major concerns addressed over the years. We're building the smallest school we possibly can. We are. We're trying to protect the 40% minimum reimbursement rate. We're planning for fewer out-of-district kids. And we got to change the state regulations. We can poo-poo that, or we can be fearful about it not working. But we changed the law. For God's sakes. We changed the law. 68% of the people want the school. There's opportunities beyond Module 5. Once this project is approved, what are the other opportunities? I haven't talked to you much about this because I don't want to overpromise. I don't want to confuse the situation. I don't want to overcomplicate an already overcomplicated situation. We've gotten 4 more points, maybe 4.75 if it all works out in our submission. That's a 10% increase in that minimum rate, from 40 to 44%. There's campus development opportunities. We have on ADAL our fields. That could be a perfect opportunity to work with a public entity, such as the town of Lexington, to see if maybe there's something we can do together to get these fields created, where they're used by Lexington, used by Lincoln, used by our area. There's some possible private development. We haven't explored that yet, but we've looked at what the market what's the word we used? We've scanned the market, which means I've answered a bunch of phone calls. And there's a lot of interest. People are asking me, what are we doing with this land? What are we doing with this building? Can we put our school there? Are you going to tear it down? There's a lot of opportunity there, but I'm not going to do anything until after we get this thing taken care of. The regional agreement improvements are continuing. Vince has taken a lead in trying to get the other towns to come to yes around a regional agreement. And that work is continuing, and that's going to continue after we get this project approved. So it all boils down to, these are the options. We can go under 16D, go through all the town meetings. Some town meetings will have override debt exclusion votes that may make their vote contingent, may or may not. Theoretically, all 16 could do it. We'd have to run the table 32 and up. The other way is a district-wide ballot, which happens on one day. The polls have to be open for 4 to 8 hours. And we could do either one. This is costing us money because the district has to pay for it. So that's our two options. Now this is backwards, but campus development, I just want to mention more. Whatever we do, these are sort of the guidelines that we're looking at now, is that we're going to make sure whatever happens is mission compatible with us, that it's campus focused. We're not going to consider things that aren't connected to what we do. We need to be very cautious here because we've heard from other folks that have been in the MSBA. When money comes into the district and you're still in that process, they use it as an opportunity to reduce their contribution. We don't want that to happen. We want to maximize their contribution. We're getting good advice. We've engaged some folks that have had experience with public-private partnerships. They're telling us how it works, what we can do, what we can't do, but we've just checked in with them today, the first time in a couple of weeks, just to tell them where we're at. Building a new high school. So when we talk about the 16D and 16N, we asked the people in the poll what they would prefer. 39% said that decision should be made by the town meetings. 46% that decision should be made by all the voters in the district on the same day. 15% had no. There are 5 certainties of this long debate in my mind. We enjoy the support of voters right now. There's no question we need this project. Securing state funding is required. Efforts to improve the regional agreement will continue, and campus development opportunities will benefit members of the district. Anything we do with the rest of this campus benefits the 16 towns, maybe 17, maybe 13 at some point, I don't know. But these, I believe, are the certainties that we come to over really almost 8 years of trying to address the issues of this building, in my tenure anyway, and before my tenure too. So I'm recommending that the school committee consider and discuss a vote under 16D. That our vote would be contingent upon, would not to exceed 144.9. Our vote would be subject to the formal approval of the school building authority. That our vote would be contingent upon no less than 44% of the eligible costs. And that means that voters would have 60 days to call a town meeting to disapprove.
The debt exclusion, what is the requirement? I mean, you have to have the vote for the debt exclusion at some point.
We don't.
No, we do, the town would have to.
It's up to the individual town.
We would need to wait for those as well, right?
Yep.
What is the time frame after the town meeting? Wait 60 days to have a town meeting. How long before you have to have a debt exclusion vote without the?
We're going to have another vote by the school committee.
No. The individual town's debt exclusion ballot. You have to have a town meeting vote for the debt exclusion, and then you have to have a ballot.
My understanding is if the towns through the town meeting process vote to approve,
Unless the vote from Minuteman was subject to a debt exclusion, the mere vote to approve binds the town regardless of whether a debt exclusion in his community passes or not.
Well said, that was great. Sharon?
Can you tell me again, you probably have said this already, so I apologize, but can you tell me again why we need to have this vote on December 1st?
I'll show you in the next slide.
Thank you.
Mr. Mangiaras?
Maybe I'm confusing the statements by Attorney Manley, but he said that a vote like this could be extended. It could be through the entire town meeting season. And why are we
Could
limiting
be,
it?
if the school committee chose that.
And why are we limiting it to 60 days now?
I'll tell you why in the next
Please
slide.
do. Thank you.
So this is a pathway. This pathway up top here is 16D as I've proposed it. On November 17th, the school committee votes. Thank you for that vote. So this part of the slide is correct now. So if we vote on December 1st, the towns would have a special town meeting to disapprove that vote. If we go under 7116D, there's a minimum of a 60-day window that a town would have to call a special town meeting to disapprove it. If a town did not call a town meeting to disapprove it, or a special town meeting was called, and the town chose to approve it, there's some towns that talked about doing that so they could have an opportunity to discuss it at a town meeting venue. February 1st, our project would be approved. What that would give us from a standpoint of construction is the opportunity, since we're going for construction management at risk, to do a lot of pre-bidding and creating bid packages earlier. And that's the number that Mary Ann was talking to about earlier. We would hit that ability to get bids earlier, to start construction a little earlier, and over this process it could save us up to $5 million. David?
So a December 1st vote would start the clock on 60 days. I know it's a
Yes.
week, but it would start the clock. That's why November 1st is there.
Yes. Alice?
I'm noting that that's during the good building season.
Yes.
What was that, Al?
That's during the good building season as opposed to starting when freezes start.
Well, you have to remember, during this time we'd be doing design and development.
Oh, okay.
But when you look at the overall schedule, we'd be able to hit a building season early. Vince?
I do have some comments on this, but I want to make sure you complete this particular segment before.
Sure.
So if you would just complete this.
So this is, if the town calls a special town meeting and does disapprove it, then the school committee has the option to revote the bonding, revote the bonding, to hold a district-wide ballot on or before April 2nd. That April 2nd was there because I'm assuming on February 1st we didn't have a project, and the town clerks that we've talked with say it would take at least 30 to 60 days for us to organize a district-wide ballot on one day. April 2nd was chosen as a potential date because it's a Saturday, because it avoids primary day, which we've been asked to specifically avoid if we have to go to a district-wide ballot. And on that particular day, we would have a project. And that still allows us, even though it's 2 months later, to save at least $2 million.
All right, thanks.
Yes,
You know, the first thing I'd like to do is congratulate the building committee and thank them for all the work they did. My concern is that all that work not proved to be futile. And specifically, I'm concerned that the methodology that has been outlined, whether under 16D or 16N, is futile. And I say that for two reasons. First, with regard to 16D, and I have two concerns about that. One is, as Dave Mangiaras pointed out, when we were here in September, we had bond counsel sitting right there. Ford raised the question, well, do we need to put them under the gun with this 60-day period? And bond counsel said, no, all we have to do is word it in such a way it won't become effective until the last vote. And that will effectively take the gun away from the heads of the local community so they don't have to vote within 60 days or be deemed to have approved the spending. I think that's important politically. It's important politically not only for the members of this district, and we've all seen the rancor over the past few years within the district. It's also important because we want to create an atmosphere that will be conducive to attracting other towns to join the district in the future. That's not a good way to go about it. So that's my concern about that, but I believe it's futile because, as we all know, a week ago tonight, Wayland, which had previously moved to withdraw, voted at their special town meeting 137 to 13 to approve their own motion of withdrawal, which they're required to do. That's more than a 10-to-1 vote. It is not reasonable to suggest that a proposal under 16D that needs unanimous approval by the 16-member towns is going to get it when Wayland just voted by more than 10-to-1 margin to withdraw. We're deluding ourselves if we operate under that premise. And so I have to ask, why bother to go that route if it's going to be futile? We don't need to do it. The statute doesn't require us to do it. And so it seems to me we shouldn't do it. The second avenue, 16N, which is a district-wide vote, I submit is also futile for a different reason. It requires a 2/3 vote. That's 11
Of the school committee.
of the school committee. It is my understanding that 6 members of this school committee, myself included, but also the representatives of Arlington, Wayland, Belmont, Lincoln, and Sudbury, representing 6 towns, 6 members, will not vote to approve a district-wide vote. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that we disagree with the statement that the superintendent made, that efforts to continue to rework the regional agreement will continue. I think that these 6 members feel that if the building is approved, work on the regional agreement amendments will cease because there will be no impetus to proceed. And that if that happens, the town fathers in Arlington, Belmont, and probably all 6 of those towns will advocate in their communities against approval of the building project. So that avenue, I submit, is futile. Now, I'm not here to derail this project. I'm here to put it back on track. That's why I joined the school committee on September 1st. It's why a year and a half ago, I suggested to Dan Matthews that he formulate a proposed set of amendments that integrate what he already had with what I call an initial withdrawal period, which would allow those towns to withdraw with a single vote so that there would be no confusion, there'd be no leap of faith required. The towns that want to continue in the district will know who's leaving. The towns that wish to leave will know that when they have authorized the new regional agreement, they will simultaneously be authorized to withdraw. I proposed that a year and a half ago. The protocol that you have seen, I've submitted to every one of you, has the date 2016. It didn't originally have the date 2016, it had the date 2015 because I submitted it to the school committee almost a year ago, in the winter of last winter. It was in fact presented, or a version of it was presented by Ed Lennox to the school committee at its meeting in April. It got short shrift. It was discussed for 10, 15 minutes and tabled. When I saw that, I concluded that the school committee was on a path that was going to render the successful completion of this building project impossible. And that's why I sought out the position, and that's why I'm here today. As I said, I'm here to try to put this back on track. I believe, based on my conversations with the 6-member towns that I've just named, that if we integrate that initial withdrawal proposal with the proposed amendments that 10 towns have already voted to accept, that the other 6 towns will support them as well. And that in fact you have a path to yes. And the sooner we abandon the approach that you outlined, which I believe to be futile, and the sooner we get onto the task
on drafting a new set of amendments and sending them out to these 16 towns so that the town boards can advocate for them in their communities, the sooner we're going to be able to get to yes. Otherwise, my fear is that the end product of this in the spring is going to be a failure, and it's not necessary.
No, thanks for your comments. I disagree. And you may also recall, if you've read through the minutes, that I was directed by the school committee to stop spending all my time on the regional agreement so that I could bring this schematic design to the MSBA earlier than was originally scoped, so that we could save additional funds because of the delays that we already had. I also have different opinions about the views that you have in regards to the futility of this, because I see a lot more support for Minuteman from voters, those that attend town meeting and those that would participate in the district-wide ballot as well.
I think I have a few comments on this. The first comment is that one of the things that you mildly implied, which irks me a little bit, is that the school committee was unsupportive of moving forward with the regional agreement. And that irks me personally a little bit, because when Ed said finally, after I've been here working on what's next for Minuteman, I've been here at the school committee for 16 years, and for 14 of those years I've been working on what's next for Minuteman. And we had a lot of things that we had to do before we got to the point we were ready to go to the MSBA. So when Ed said, I don't know how many years ago it was, that I think it's time to start getting into the MSBA process, I said, well, I think I was the first person who brought this to his attention, is that based on my conversation with a number of communities over the years, I think that it's going to be important for us to revisit the regional agreement. And Ed at first did not seem to state an opinion in agreement with that. But he went out and had a few conversations, and he came back and said, yeah, I think that that's probably right. So we put together a method by which members from the member towns can come and start discussing it. And we did this 3 or 4 rounds.
We started in January 2010.
We started in the beginning of 2010, trying to get the member towns to come together and look at the issues and put it together. And we tried it 3 or 4 times. I was the chair of the first time through it, so I was involved a lot in the first round.
And I
not
was
so
the chair
much
of the last time
of the
through.
last time through it. So I tried, personally, this is my effort, for all those years to get the member towns officials to take it seriously, to come together and put together a revised regional agreement. And some people said our efforts were naive in moving forward, but I thought it was worth trying, not once, not twice, but 3 times. A huge effort by this man and his administration, by members of the school committee, for all those years. In the last round, my understanding is that we had 9 out of 16 member communities participate strongly. Is that correct? 9 out of 16 were willing to come and work on the damn thing, which was very disappointing. Now, the 9 who did it spent a lot of time on it and came up with an agreement that I thought was, in most ways, pretty good. But it was still only 9 of them willing to come. For 4 years, we tried to do it. And the last round was, vetoed by Wayland. They had their reasons. I don't know, I guess you mentioned some of the reasons. It didn't give them a guaranteed path out. It gave them a much easier path than our current agreement, but not a guaranteed path out. I agree with you. Maybe that should have been in it, but it wasn't to me. It was the member communities, officials, who created that agreement, and the ones who participated, and the ones who chose not to participate. And so, you may not like the outcome, but we have tried like hell to bring that agreement to fruition. And we're still strongly in favor of it. Now, it may be that you think it's going to be harder to move forward with it after we agree with this building, but there is a couple of giant incentives still in play. One of them is to get that average cost over a series of years instead of the big jumps in the, in the assessments. That's a big thing. The other big thing is that we're not going to attract anybody new, which would be helpful with the current agreement. So I think that there are incentives in moving forward. Now, if you could come up with a new agreement and have it in place in the time frame so we don't lose that $2 to $5 million, then I'd be happy to help you do so. But as it is, we are tight on the building, we've sacrificed various things that we think are valuable, and I don't want to sacrifice another $2 to $5 million of it. Now, I think that if you guys, meaning the member towns, were really serious about it, I think you could go to a room, lock the doors, stay there overnight next week, and come up with an agreement. And then you could hold special town meetings, and you can have it all done by January, mid-January.
And if we do that, you'll support it.
If you come up with something that does not, especially if your vote was contingent on everybody approving the building project. In other words, if you guys were serious, you could lock yourself in a room next week. Then, of course, you have to send it to the commissioner. So you have to allow time for that and get the lawyers get out. So you have to allow, that's why you got to do it next week.
Well, that's why I proposed it over a year ago.
Well, except for it's in your court, not in ours, because we're focused on something else. So if you can get your guys to agree to something tomorrow, next week, we'll be happy to look at it and try to get it approved by mid-January, along with an agreement for the new building project. I'd be happy about that. We're not against a new regional agreement. We've tried for 4 years for it.
And I met with Vince and we had I guess we both agreed on something. Vince agreed to back the building if I agreed to back a new regional agreement. And I said to Vince, I think that's right, I said to Vince, if you can get the 16 communities to come up with an agreement that they all agree on, I'm going to agree with it. First of all, I have no choice, but I would thoroughly agree on it. I think because we have an existing agreement, the one that was turned down, or not approved is probably a better word, I think you've got a pretty good pathway. And I think it's the selectmen that need to sit down and do it. I think it's their responsibility now to take on that obligation. I think you've led that. I applaud you for that. I think there are three pieces to that agreement that need to be in there that'll have to make it happen. One, proportionate voting. That was in the other one. If you put it in this one, I think you're going to get some agreement out of some towns. As I've told Arlington in this case, I don't think it means anything because I've never seen Arlington and Dover vote differently. And it really wouldn't change any votes anyway, and I think two of their selectmen agree with me on that.
Leave it in, but he doesn't think it would make a great deal of difference in practice.
So, but I think you should have it. I definitely think you should have it. Secondly, I think if you change the funding of capital, get rid of the 5 minimum, I think that would appease, I know that would appease Dover, because Dover's issue is not Minuteman. Dover's issue is the cost of the student. They're saying the cost of the students is going to double, not quite double. So that was their problem. So I think if you did that piece, I think that would work. And then finally, yeah, give the towns a chance to get out, but I'd like to see you work just as hard about doing an agreement that would entice towns to stay in. But that would be their choice, not my choice. So I think, personally, I think you can get it done. I think Jeff's statement is get everybody together in a room.
Next week.
And work it out. And I went to the meeting in Weston, and I didn't see a lot of agreement there. I saw a lot of sort of fussing around. We had a discussion the other day, Friday morning, to talk about this, but they were much more interested in talking about the regional agreement, and I didn't see any agreement there. But I think you need to sit down with 16 of the selectmen and get it done. And we've asked the superintendent to pay attention to the building, but I think we would all approve. I assume we would all approve, that's pretty rash, an agreement that you all came up with that everybody agreed with. So do it, get it done.
If I may, first of all, there should be no mystery about the proposed regional agreement that I put on the table, because it adopted in its entirety the proposed regional agreement that was put before the member towns to Successive Springs. I added only one section, a section I call the initial withdrawal section, and it was specifically designed to allow for member towns to declare their interest in withdrawing and to give effect to that for a limited period of time, which would expire, after which the regular procedure for withdrawal that was already in the agreement that you all signed off on 2 years ago would take effect. So it's not as though we have to start at the beginning. That was never the intent. I did meet with Ford, and I did commit to him to support the building. And unfortunately, I didn't get the same commitment I was looking for in return. And that's why I'm here. And all I've heard since then is, Vince, what you need to do is divorce the building project from the approval of the regional agreement, if I may finish. And that is the crux of the matter, because there are enough of us, which is to say 6 of us, who feel it's imperative to link the two, so that you will not be able to get a 16-inch vote. At which point I have to ask the question, why waste the time when you have an alternative avenue to succeed?
And if you can do that alternative avenue in the time frame that does not lose us $5 million, then I support it. But I have to say, you're going to have to change more things, as Ford mentioned, in order to get all 16 to commit.
Okay, let me test that support.
You'd have to work fast.
Let me test that support. Are you willing to give those of us who are working to amend it access to any of the resources of the school committee, legal counsel, other resources?
I think that you guys have to do that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Come on.
That's not a sincere effort to get us to yes. And what you're doing is you're essentially telling us, go flail around on your own, and we'll pursue
what resources course. What we had for you a consultant that we paid for from a grant.
You have counsel.
That, well, it wasn't so much, it was the, who was it?
Mass Association of Regional Schools.
Mass Association of Regional Schools had a person that worked with this group to develop the agreement. It was only after they agreed on the terms that we put it to the legal counsel, and then after legal counsel to the Commissioner of Education. So we hired somebody to help us do that, as a person who helped the group work together can hire the same person. We don't have a contract with that person. You could hire the same person to help you guys out. But what was that?
And we had a grant.
And we had a grant to do it. Now, somebody gave us money to do it. If it's worth a lot for you to do it, then you'll spend a few dollars to do it.
When you speak of you, this is a we, this is not a you. We are the 16 member towns of this district. What I'm proposing is something that will benefit all of us. What I'm asking for is the support of all of us, so that we can get the
you make a proposal of what you think you need and the time frame and what you think the result is. We'll be happy to put it on to take a look at.
Okay, you suggested we get in a room next week to hammer this out.
Yes.
How about you give us counsel for the school committee to sit down with us and help us hammer it out next week?
I don't think, again, it wasn't our counsel, it was the expert in
Bob Lennon.
Yeah.
Ed Lennox.
Ed Lennox.
Who was not part of the district's council.
All right, so if you can arrange to retain Ed Lennox to work with this group next week, I'll be happy to give him the time, and I'll sit down with him and try to get it done.
Okay, let me go in order for the names I have, and then we'll come back. So I had Allison, then David, and then Carrie. Alice.
Well, I'm interested in this discussion, partly because although there's apparently 6 members of the school committee that have already agreed that these things are inextricably linked, I was not contacted, and I don't recall discussing this in the meeting. So I conclude that there have been discussions that have gone on outside of the meeting. The second thing that I'm concerned about is the introduction of uncertainty into member communities who are considering going for a vote, whether they're going to vote along this accelerated timeline or whether they were going to vote in the normal course of their town meetings, introducing an uncertainty as to which towns are in the district would cause a bit of chaos and make it very difficult for the towns to make decisions. So I'm concerned about both of those things. And I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm confused because I didn't realize that that there have been decisions made by 6 members of the school committee.
Just as I actually give this a fair amount of thought, because the regional agreement is always in my mind. One way to partly avoid that is that part of the thing you have to agree with is who's going to leave and who's going to stay. And that would be perhaps part of the agreement. The agreement would include that, so there'd be certainty. In other words, all the 16 member towns would agree, yes, we're going to allow, these guys want to leave, we're going to allow them to leave. That would have to be part of it to eliminate that uncertainty. So they could do that by folding it into the agreement, but they'd have to make that decision in a short period of time.
Well, that is an integral part of the proposal I put forward. It's spelled out as to exactly how that would happen. And if you're not familiar with what the proposal says, let me reiterate it. The proposal says that there would be an initial withdrawal provision. Each town that has a board of selectmen that has put on the warrant for its town meeting a question as to whether the town would like to request a withdrawal shall notify the school committee of that fact and declare its intent to have that on the warrant. The school committee would then prepare a set of amendments. That set of amendments would be the same set of amendments you presented to us for 2 successive years, in addition to which it would have this initial withdrawal provision and a paragraph within it which would name all of the towns that have declared their intent to have a question on the ballot. That way, every town voting on that set of amendments would know at their town meeting the outside limits of the towns that would withdraw. And they could then make up their minds whether they live with that outside limit or not. The towns that have then declared that intent would vote at their town meetings and they would make a decision whether to withdraw or not. So, for example, if 4 towns declared their intent and only 3 towns voted to withdraw, you would have a district with 13 member towns if it was approved by all 16. It's not that complicated.
For this to work, this would all have to be done within a couple of months.
That's why I say that we shouldn't waste our time on 2 approaches which are futile.
David Jarvis.
I have a question, I didn't quite get where. George Spalding said his 3 conditions were, the first one?
I don't have any conditions. What I'm saying
Just tell me
is,
what you said the first one.
excuse me,
I'm just asking answer my question.
I'm not going to answer your question because it's not
Thank
a
you.
correct question. What I will say is,
I'll move on.
I think there are 3 things that
May I move on, please?
I think there are 3 things that the committee.
You asked him a question, you misinterpreted what he said, and now is letting you know what he did say, which is, I think, a fair response.
There are 3 things that I think the group should consider. First is proportionate voting. Second is the capital apportionment. And third is the ability to get out. And that would just be my recommendation. If the selectmen only need one of those, which is the provision to get out, and you have 16 towns that agree with it, I'm fine with that. So I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with what Vince is doing at all. All I want to see is I want to see 16 towns sign on, and I like the time frame that Jeff said by January, but you know, I'm fully in favor of what you're doing, and I think that's why I'm saying get 16 towns to agree, and I think you have an agreement.
May I continue?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, thank you. Over a year ago, colleagues at this table made the suggestion that there be this get out of jail free card. I made it specifically to the chairs, and the response was, and it's on video, I can get you the video, was we are not going in that direction. This is over a year ago. So that Vince got the stonewall on that particular item is understandable. I think it was brought up 2 years ago within the regional agreement revision group, and it got pushed under the table. But the last thing, and then I'll turn it over, is that you do this 60-day approval, you move ahead with that. You have no, your intentions, you expect the consequences are going to be, well, people won't show up and then we'll get this approval. But I think the unintended consequence to this maneuver is that you're going to create so much error amongst 1 or 2 or 3 towns that what Vince has said is a fait accompli at this point, because you know at least Wayne will call a special town meeting, because it'll cost them $20,000 to do it, and they'll save, in their minds, probably $10 million. So this is not wise, and it's not fair. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Vince, did you have any, I know you're a practicing attorney, have you had any other attorneys look at your proposal?
Yes, I ran it by my town council before I presented it. He said that conceptually it looked appropriate. Obviously, I didn't retain him to write the agreement.
No.
That's why, if I can just finish, that's why I'm asking for the support of this committee to retain Ed Lennox or someone suitable to write it so that we can vote it.
So I've read it. Conceptually, it's sound, but in terms of its actual implementation is where the issues seem to be. And that you're looking at trying to get town meeting to approve 2 separate warrant articles, but yet those warrant articles are intimately connected one to another. I don't see how you could have some towns voting both of them correctly, and other towns approving one and not the other, and actually having an agreement at the end of that process.
Okay, well.
I don't know, has the Department of Ed seen this at all?
Well, it has not, I haven't put it to the Department of Ed, but I have asked for help in doing so. I spoke with Dan Matthews and asked for that help, and I was told, well, he doesn't believe in the approach, so I didn't get any help from him. I would ask this committee for help in putting it before the Department of Ed, because we all want the same thing. I'm trying to get us to yes.
I understand.
And if you can be helpful in that regard, I think it would be very helpful. And I wanted to respond to the other point you made, which is how would it work? And there is, we all received a letter that Ed Lennox wrote on September 2nd. And he talks about 16D and 16F. And he talks in particular about the last sentence in 16D, which is a sentence which says that, and the legislature obviously adopted this, that this is a sentence that provides that if some towns approve the bond, but other towns do not, then if 2/3 of the towns that have voted to approve it elect to, they can proceed on their own. Now, we don't have that in our agreement, because our agreement is silent on that. But any questions you have about how it would work, that some might approve the bonding and others might not, I suggest, can easily be answered with reference to that provision in the local.
Yeah, I don't see them as connected, but the other question, the other statement I have for you, you asking for help, and the way, I know you haven't been on the school committee that long, but the way that you do that is that you talk with me, we talk about a proposal, and I bring it to the officers, or you can bring it to them directly. But I am under a vote of this school committee right now not to work on this agreement. So you're asking me to violate a vote of this committee by asking for help. So I think it's the way that you do it is probably needs to be considered. And at this late date, I don't see how I'm going to be able to spend any time on it. We've spent a lot of money and a lot of time on a lot of things this year. Fortunately, we haven't had to spend any money or time on the regional agreement, which is why we have a schematic design that's within budget.
If I may respond, I'm not asking you to violate anything, Ed. I did meet with you on several occasions over the past year and a half, several times for my own board of selectmen, other times at various meetings. I made my concerns clear to you on many occasions. And I sit here in this meeting and I ask for help. I'm addressing that request to the school committee. The school committee can't vote to give me that help. So don't suggest that I'm asking you to violate any this school committee truly wants to get to yes, this is the way to do it, and I'm asking for its help to get there.
Carrie Flood. After that, Jack.
And I remember clearly that you brought the seeding concept up at a municipal breakfast meeting several months ago. I think it was in the spring sometime. I remember where we were sitting. It was an interesting idea, and I was sorry that it hadn't come up previously. I was sorry that some of the towns who were interested in it based on the conversation that morning had not been in the committee that had worked on it in my iteration of it. You know, we did have an easy withdrawal means in the agreement version that was brought to town meetings. Some of the communities who turned it down, or some of the communities who chose not to vote on it at all, are among the communities that you listed earlier, and I share Alice's concern about how that group knows about one another's positions if it has not been discussed here in this committee. But my point is that I don't oppose the ideas that you talked about then and have talked about more recently, or that I read in I think it was titled The Protocol or something like that recently. It came to me not through this committee, but through the Concord Board of Selectmen, who asked for my opinion on it, and I looked at it and I said, well, I have some questions about how it would work, but it needs to come to my committee before we can talk about it. So I also want to back up Ed. When things were coming to us as piecemeal suggestions, but not a formal proposal coming through the superintendent to the officers with a request to put something on an agenda, I don't know how to react to that. You know, there's no mechanism for me as an officer to respond to that. If it's not on the agenda, if it's not something that we're talking about as a committee. And if we have taken a vote instructing not just Ed as superintendent, but a decision on the part of this committee that we needed to move away from what was feeling like fruitless conversation about the agreement and formulas and so forth, and focus on the building and on the building project, and that's what we've done. That does not mean that we would not encourage representatives of the local governments to get together on their own dime and their own time to come to us with a solid proposal. But I think it needs to come through channels.
Dave Horton, I have a couple names that wait a long time.
I'm not going to go over past history or look for more recommendations. Just want to say things that I appreciate the fact that as a member of the school committee, but also a member of the town, you're on your board, right?
Yes, I'm chairman.
Chairman. That you're taking that suggestion that was made by the school committee that the selectmen, we need the selectmen to work it out and bring us something. So saying that, I think it may be more difficult to, even in 6 months, but it needs to be proven, of course, that you'll get 16 towns to be able to come up with something. For instance, as I recall, proportionate voting was one of the sticking points for some communities, because some communities saw their assessments going up and others going down, and there was I think Arlington was one, wasn't it? That Arlington goes up.
Arlington's assessment went up, but they were the ones Charlie Fawcett strongly speaking in favor of proportional voting because they pay such a large portion of the bill.
Right.
But smaller towns.
But smaller towns objected. That was one of the stumbling blocks, was proportional voting. But the two that people probably could agree on were the need to work on capital assessment, how the capital assessment was determined, and also the chance to leave. And I did see what you, I did read what you wrote just recently, and I think even there, not in what you wrote, but there was a response from another community, and they said, well, I had questions about this and questions about that. I really do applaud what you're doing. Go for it. But it ain't going to be easy, because that's my little...
Jack, who's next? And then I'll come back to this. I'll continue my little bar on this. So Jack, next. Jack, next.
Can I ask a few quick questions before making a comment? The first quick question is, how much money did we spend or authorize to be spent on the survey that the Suffolk University group did? Was that about $10,000?
No, the Paleogas study?
Yes.
The total was $18,000.
The second one, before Vince started, I was going to ask a question for Ed, but I'll kind of frame this more as a comment. This $5 million in savings.
2 to 5 is the range she gave us, depending on
when. Yeah, so I'm looking at the $5 million number, and I'm saying, well, $5 million represents about 3 3/4% of a $145 million project. And if you accelerate the time of approval by 4 months, that says that construction costs would have to be growing at 14% per year in order to achieve a $5 million savings by accelerating your approval process by 4 months. I don't know, what the right number is, but I think that number is dramatically overstated because construction costs aren't running at 14% a year.
No, you're on the school building committee. You were there when Mary Ann described how she came up with those numbers, because Mary Ann was the one who developed that. It's based upon contingencies being reduced, escalation being reduced, as well as hitting the construction seasons differently and putting out big bid packages early. She was very specific about how that number arrived. It's not overinflated. It was done by our owner's project manager, and it's real savings. And my concern is, what am I going to get out of 144.9 next when that $5 million is lost because we go back to July?
Let me be clear that is the important point. The important point is not that the district saves $2 to $5 million. It means we have to cut the project because we have a cap unless the communities want to throw in another $5 million in the fund. So if it was only a $5 million expense to the district, I would not be so concerned. But what it means is another $2 to $5 million spent on the value of the project instead of BS. And I have to go by what the experts tell me, because that's all that I can go on. I mean, she's not a person who seems to me to be a person exaggerating and throwing numbers around. She seems to be, based on my history with her, pretty professional. So I have to go by her number that, depending on when we get started with the project, it can be another up to $5 million spent on value instead of wasted, and all the possible bad things that can happen when you push the project out and miss the wrong season and whatnot. That's important.
So the broader comment that I want to make, because the whole discussion about the regional agreement, Bob McLaughlin in our town spent a lot of time on both regional agreement task force. Belmont was prepared to vote for the revised regional agreement until the issue came up, well, who's going to be in the district, and we were fixing the size of the school and then sizing the district, and an issue of we're fixing the size of the school, then letting members out to come back in the door as non-member communities in a way that's more financially advantageous. And so that was the rock upon which Belmont got hung up. But we were reasonably agnostic about the regional agreement. All of that said, although I don't think it's a compelling driving issue for Belmont, I am more than happy, Vince, to spend my time working with you, working with others who want to join, in trying to figure out getting the selectmen together. I mean, yes, we said the selectmen have to take the initiative. I'm happy to try to spend some time trying to pull that together, get them all in the room, and work out what I think are those issues with Ford. Whether we can be successful or not, I don't know. The other thing I would suggest is if we could drop $18,000 on a public opinion survey at the start of this year, maybe what we should do, and I'll come back and make this an amendment, a motion if people want, authorize the expenditure up to, pick a number, $10,000 if we get conceptual agreement on the business terms. So don't start paying the legal fees yet, but if we can get conceptual agreement amongst the member towns on the business terms for a modified version of the amended agreement, at that point, let the school authorize the use of engaging Ed Lennox to redraft it in a way that can be brought before us.
So basically, once again, let me just state that I'm not worried about the money required to put this into motion. So that's exactly what Jack says. But it has to be done in the time frame. See, that's the problem. That's the reason why I think that there's an issue. It has to be in the time frame so we don't lose the $5 million. And getting them all to agree to that, and that without losing that money is an issue. So I promised that Vince would be able to speak after that, but I'll continue my list.
Yeah, as I said, I'm willing to spend time. I welcome Jack's support and help, and we'll try to get some appropriate getting together as soon as possible to do that. If I can get some sense that if at the end of our labors we'll be able to get the legal support necessary to put it into a document that this committee can vote on, that would be a real help.
Right, Sue, did you have your hand up?
I just wanted to say that it shouldn't be any surprise, but Arlington would obviously be very much behind this effort, and I can offer myself and the town leadership to do whatever we need to do to make it happen. I mean, if we really believe that there's $2 to $5 million at risk here in terms of timing, I think we should all do whatever we can to get this done as fast as possible, right?
Next week?
No. I know it's been very frustrating to work on this, believe me. I know it has been. But we do have a different set of circumstances now than we did before. There's both a carrot and a stick for people to get this done now. So I can't promise next week, but I can tell you as soon as possible.
Next week's Thanksgiving.
Right, so I would allow a little bit more time on this. But I think that there's a sense here that maybe is different from what you thought, that people are not against moving forward with a new regional agreement, even connected with the building project, if it can be done in a fashion that does not derail our timeline. I personally don't think that there's a large chance of you getting all 16 member towns to agree with this. I'd be delighted if you did. Tie it into the votes have to say that if you vote for this, you also have to vote to approve the building project. It would probably have to be a special town meeting held in like January for all 16 member towns. It's not impossible to do this. I think that if you came up with a formal proposal, the school committee would be happy to look at it. But I think that the point that Jack made, that you have to have agreement on the hard points first. Hard points meaning the major aspects of the agreement and who you're going to let leave. So all the member towns have to agree on who's the people who are going to leave. That has to be part of it. Not like leave it to the future and leave uncertainty. It has to be, written out. If you come up with that agreement, then we'd probably be, and all the towns agree with it, why would we not be happy to move forward with it if it doesn't derail our timeline?
I'll take that as a message of support, and I'll be happy to work with Jack and Sue and any others.
But there'd be one more thing I want from you. If you can't do it within the time frame, I want you to say, we'd be happy to support the referendum. In other words, if we do this effort and it fails, then I think that you guys should say, we tried our best, you supported us, now we'll support the referendum to get this done on time.
Right, and with that comment, I think you just explain why it is that you're so eager to push ahead with 2 votes that I believe are futile. Because there's no way that I or any other member of the school committee in good faith can make that representation in advance of first the effort that we're going to make, and secondly the discussion in our towns.
Can I just make a comment on the date? I mean, if you're saying that date is December 1st, it's just a non-starter. I'm working on a loan closing at my company that's December 1st. December 1st is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving week. People start disappearing next Tuesday and Wednesday. For us to say we're going to get 16 selectmen together to have the discussion, to reach a resolution the week of Thanksgiving is not realistic. But that's not to say we can't move forward urgently.
I think I agree with almost everything that I'm hearing at this point. I think, Vince, I'm surprised that it hasn't happened already, but I think you need to get 16, I say 16 selectmen, I know it's 16 towns, but you need to get those 16 selectmen together. You need to get those 16 selectmen to agree, in principle, you don't need a legal word, in principle, on what you want to accomplish. Now, I gave you the 3 things that I think you have to do. Maybe you only need 1, maybe you need 5, I don't know. But you need to get the 16 selectmen to agree in principle and write it down on a piece of paper. This is what we want in the regional agreement, and this is what we will support. I'd even say go as far as having the 16 boards of selectmen to vote it. But that may be asking too much, because remember, in some towns we have 5, sometimes we have 3, sometimes we have 3. But you need to get them on board with what you're recommending. Then if you have that on board, and you have it on a piece of paper, you come back to this committee. If you need legal advice, you need advice from the Department of Ed, you need something, then we can help you get there. I think we can help you get there. But I think the most important thing is getting the 16 selectmen agreeing. And if you tell me that a Dan Matthews all of a sudden said he didn't like something, you got a problem. You gotta get 16 selectmen in accord and marching. And then I think we can support you, I would think 100%. And I'm not even telling you what that should be in that agreement. Just get them to agree.
Dave Allen.
I'll try to be brief. Every time we come up with some sort of agreement, it then becomes mission impossible because you keep throwing more conditions on this whole process. And this is what I found over the last 7 years to be the problem with the school committee. But I will end my comments with this last one. There is a model of leading the regional district. The town of Worthington, Mass. Did that. They had to go through their legislature, petition, and then the DESC approved it. Commissioner Chester sent a letter of approval for them to lead. And what's interesting, looking at the numbers and looked at it before I came in today, the model, the financial model is very much similar to Boxford. Probably very similar to Wayland in the numbers of people, the dollars that are involved, and so forth. It could be done if there was some more cooperation from the school committee.
I just want to say that when we talk about towns agreeing, that's an ambiguous term because sometimes the boards of selectmen agree to something that their towns won't support. The reason why the regional agreement was taken up back when it was because people were forward-thinking and realized that it would take a great deal of time to get an agreement. And there were, I think, Kevin, were there 26 different models proposed at that one iteration? So out of the 3 times that these committees met.
They ran out of number of letters.
Yeah, there were options that came up, option A, option B, whatever. And as soon as one was approved by the school committee, it was shut down by somebody. And so it took a long time, and I think most of us realized that it would take a long time, which is why that was started so early in the process. And eventually it was abandoned because we were running out of time. And I do recall that during that period of time, there were discussions about pairing the number of towns with building votes. So, you know, towns in and towns out at the same time as voting on the building project. And the reason why that didn't end up happening as a viable alternative was because everybody has sat in a town meeting where the town meeting is confused. And it's frequently where there are 2 things paired together. What does a no vote mean? What does a yes vote mean? You have to vote yes on this and no no on the second one, yes on the first one, yes on the second one, what does this mean? People are sitting in the back of the hall saying, well, wait a minute, I'm confused, and the vote is over, and the whole thing is messed up by confusion. So that is the reason why the pairing of those two things was not pursued, was because of the danger of losing this due to confusion of the voters. Very easy to confuse.
I have a couple more people on my list, and then we have to wrap it up. Dave Ward.
Just another word to this. As I recall, it was not, maybe I'm mistaken, someone can contradict me if I'm correct. But I didn't think there was great disagreement on how communities could lead. A lot of the disagreement was strong. There was strong disagreement on the capital assessment form. There were some towns who wanted to stay with the old formula, not the more formula, not moving to the new one. So getting out was, I think, not the big hang-up. Money wasn't a hang-up, and voting was a hang-up. And I was just looking at my notes for I wrote my notes to know what you. I also just like to add that if I can, I would not want to serve on a committee. I've got too many other things going on, and I'd be happy to be liaison, facilitate something with licensing if you need to. I would be happy to do that.
One more comment, and then we'll let you have the last word. Although I have a suggestion. Yes.
Okay. Right away, I want to say that if there were some kind of agreement, written, signed, whatever, that were brought to this committee, I would definitely, as Jack has suggested, support spending some money to have council review it. That wouldn't be a question for me. I do want to say, for a couple of reasons, I'm not going to say I'm happy to come to meetings and work on it. One is that I really don't think I have the time right now in the near term. The other is that I personally am afraid I would be in a done, if you've been there, done that, here's why it won't work, or here's why it didn't work, or I don't want to retard the creativity or the open-mindedness of the process. On the other hand, if I can be a resource in supplying notes or background materials that we had, without comment, or you just got an objective question about what the process was, I'd be happy to help in that respect. But it needs to be very limited because I'm not going to be in the dialogue.
Last words from Vince, and then I think a suggestion from Bruce.
Okay, thank you. I do think that the issues that raised, David, are the issues that my proposal was aimed at solving. Those towns that were most concerned about the formula change, Foxborough was one of them, would likely be one of those towns that would be on the list for considering withdrawal. I don't know that my town would vote to withdraw, but I can tell you that we will have an article on our warrant asking if they want to do that. And so those towns that are in that camp would actually have an incentive to vote for this if they really wanted to do that. So that's how it was designed. I understand the frustration, Carrie, that you talked about when we're having, and the chair spoke about it, I'm having to spend so much time on this, but I attempted to put in an incentive for each of the 16 towns to vote for this, which I thought was the whole reason that it was presented 2 years ago. So I think, I appreciate the support of people willing to work. I will attempt to do it as quickly as possible and come back for legal support if needed. I reiterate my concern about the two votes that have been recommended by the superintendent. I think, as I said, they are doomed to fail, and I don't want to see us racing to a red line.
Okay, just a comment for the superintendent, because nobody stated this before necessarily. I don't believe that they're doomed to fail, because the cost of going without MSBA help in fixing up this building is a big incentive that may in the end sway the day, because it's not a made-up cost. It may not be, as Jack said, one of the risks. I love Jack's listing of risks, because I have the exact same list. I may emphasize them differently, but if I turned out with my piece of paper in my mind with the risk that I've labeled on them, it's exactly what you said. that number that they put out may not be right, but even if you have a range of 20 or 30%, up and down in your Excel spreadsheet, the result is the same. Going without MSBA's help, without a formal project, is a disaster. And as we get closer to the deadline, people can understand that. Having a new regional agreement is better, but I don't necessarily think that the other options are a disaster. My personal opinion, superintendent has a suggestion.
I was invited to a meeting of the selectmen on December 2nd. Found out about that meeting yesterday. I found out about it yesterday. I don't have anything in writing. They just said, come to this meeting. It'd be a perfect opportunity for the selectmen to get together and discuss this issue and come to some sort of a corporate request of the school committee based upon some progress towards agreement. And then this school committee could review that request on December 3rd. And if the request seemed to have potential, it could be considered in the vote that I'm suggesting. Officers haven't said they're going to have this vote or not. I'm suggesting this vote. And I think that December 2nd opportunity ought to be utilized for this purpose.
We're scheduled for December 1st.
Change it.
Who's going to go here? We can take a vote on December 1st, that says he can go to a meeting on the 2nd. Who's going to go to
One of the selectmen, I think he was from Lincoln, or no, from Concord. He made it a public announcement at that meeting.
This is the first I've heard this.
So now you have a path to pursue, and my only concern is it has to be within our time frame, because I'm all happy with what you came up with. As long as it doesn't lose us the $5 million. Was there, do you?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if we asked you to speak for yourself.
Yes,
For the committee.
absolutely.
I'd just like to clarify what the school committee would be.
We haven't made any decision on that yet. Okay, Alice?
Oh.
You were just,
I
you were just saying
wanted
that.
to say
Yeah.
you speak for yourself when you
Correct.
say you'd be willing, but you can't speak for the committee.
Absolutely not. So, Dr. McQuillan, do you have anything else under this item?
No, thank you.
So, based on how events unfold, would the committee be willing, I'm not going to say we should vote to definitely change the date now, but if events unfold in a certain manner, would it be okay if we were to shift the date to December 3rd?
I cannot be here.
You cannot be
We're
here.
not in county.
Right. How about the others?
What's the third?
Thursday. I don't know.
I'm out of the country that whole week.
Well, you still going to be here anyways?
What about the 8th? December 8th?
Postpone our meeting by a week?
Because that meeting is Doug Gillespie's meeting, 7 p.m.
Somebody mentioned December 8th.
December
Right.
8th.
For school.
For the school committee.
I'll try with it. What time would you be? What time would you?
Will you post a bail?
What time? What time would you be planning on meeting?
We'll spring
Our
it.
usual time.
Is this instead of the one that I heard was?
Instead of the 1st.
There is one in 15, isn't there?
Yes.
I'm just,
We have another
just
whole
making a statement.
Wait, you're instead of or?
Instead of the 1st.
Instead of the first?
Right, instead of the 1st, the 8th instead of the 1st.
Regularly.
Let's put the 8th on the agenda instead of the 1st. And if we have something to meet about, we'll meet, else we'll wait till the 13th. The 15th.
So we're talking about the 8th?
Right now,
The 8th instead of the 1st.
Are we talking about 6 o'clock?
I would go later, 6:30.
And down on
Right, the 8th instead, that would give you some time to launch the efforts.
I would prefer the 15th, than the 8th.
Well, the 15th we're meeting anyway.
Oh, we already have that.
It's a regular school.
We had, what, I'm sorry, are we talking
that are time sensitive on that?
Well, everything, all of our dates now are geared towards not losing the $5 million. So the time frame that we selected is not because we want to rush this through because we're crazy people driving down 128 at 95 miles an hour. I guess they have 95 as the average, and I have 115 crazy on that road. But we want to make sure that we don't jeopardize the timing of saving that money. That's why we had this special meeting.
It just seems to me that if the vote that would have been presented on the 1st of calling a special town meeting within 60 days were postponed to the 15th, you call a vote for a special town meeting on February 15th versus February 1st, yeah, you lose 2 weeks. I honestly, I mean, it wasn't until this discussion that I ever contemplated this whole regional agreement discussion. But the 15th gives more of a reasonable chance for the boards of selectmen to get together, think about it, and at least have it so that the subgroup report on where things are, and then people can make an informed decision about the 15th. It's already on the calendar. Moving it a week doesn't seem to accomplish much.
So let the officers put the 8th on your schedule just in case, and the officers will get together and we'll look at the numbers. Take out the first.
No, I would leave the first. First for now.
Oh, I would do
What was that? So leave it as it is. The officers will meet with the superintendent, looks at the dates, have a discussion, and make a decision accordingly.
Yeah, the only thing is, I hope, Vince, when you come to issue on 16, as I say, 16 yeses.
Vince is gonna do it. I have to say that for the very first meeting he came to, I don't want to say to my husband, look at this new guy.
But again, if you get the support for real, then we're interested in moving forward. Right. So let me apologize for the fact that we are way behind our agenda item. Yes.
Consideration, if we have the meeting on 1st, because next week is a holiday week, it has to be posted on Tuesday. Just think about that.
It can always be canceled.
Yeah, you post it and we'll cancel.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're gonna. I do apologize a little late, but I think that you'll agree that the issues that we're discussing wanted a little bit of extra time. So I hope you won't yell at me too badly.
Should we take a meeting about an hour ago past 10?
We have 9 minutes. Maybe we can finish everything. We don't have an executive session.
We should be able to.
We don't have an executive session.
Come on, Jack.
So Kevin Mahoney. Motion for what?
I move to award a motion to award $400 for the Vocational School District Bond of
Do I have to wait for the vote?
sold on November 10th, 2015, dated November 20th, 2015, and maturing November 18th, 2016, to Eastern Bank at an annual service cost of 0.75%.
Second. All right. Who would like to do a presentation?
Can we just approve?
Is there any discussion?
It's a renewal of existing bond anticipation notes to fund the feasibility study.
Any questions? All in favor? Anyone opposed? We do still have a quorum?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Moving on to first quarter reports, Kevin.
The next item in your packet, you will find the FY 16 preliminary revenue report, projecting estimated receipts, the FY 16 budget expenditure report, that's a 4-page report that lists in summary by function code and in detail breaking out salary and expenses, activity through the first quarter, and statement of revolving funds is the third item. That is a 2-page document. The Finance Committee at the meeting earlier this month reviewed the reports, asked detailed questions. In summary, it's the first quarter, or only 1 month into the school year, so there really wasn't a lot of activity. What it basically reflected in the general fund was staffing changes and unfilled positions. And the revolving accounts, we just basically went through those. The only point of note is we've been working with the Finance Committee on the, we're moving forward in the Child Development Center and vocational accounts on page 2. We're good to continue to work there, but outside of that, I think it's pretty straightforward. All comments are noted.
And I'm sure everybody studied the reports in there, so we have here. Yep. Does anybody have any questions based on their review of Rick's comments? Okay. Is there a motion? We have a motion.
You have a motion? Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Moving on to the subcommittee reports.
Okay, so right after those full pages that are in the packet, the policies, policy DDA, which is gives grants, donations, and scholarships you've seen before. This is the second time you've seen it, and I'm asking for a vote.
So
Any discussion on the motion?
Can I just add that they were headed by the Finance Committee was approved?
Exactly.
Yes, it's all written on the bottom of the page we do.
People did see that. We vetted it and
Okay,
approved.
any questions about it? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? It's unanimous. Next one is DN. So DN, the new version is first, and the second version of DN is the very terse version that exists currently, which has 5 points, has no real guidance to anyone. DN is the proposed first reading, the longer version of this. Does anyone have?
So moved.
Motion for the floor. Second for Barry. Discussion on this proposal has been reviewed by the people listed at the bottom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Abstentions? No abstentions? Carries unanimously. The end of the policy subcommittee report.
Great. Secretary's report.
I move that we approve the minutes of October 13th, 2015 as presented.
Second.
That's it? That's it?
Well, you haven't taken the vote.
Go ahead.
Oh, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favor, opposed, none, abstentions, 4. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? No, we don't.
Next time we have a building, well, we do it at the very end of the meeting and find. It was far better than I thought it would be.
I'm going to see Carmen 7:30.
Great presentation. This is the only way I can ask. I got roped into it.
They did a good job.
We can get to
They
the
did a very good job. That's not how it's- Yeah, they did a great job.
President Carlisle, what has a press?
Sure, we all want to get home, but we should connect this in 2 seconds.